However, Ren Xiaosu did not have any intention of appreciating it. He only wanted to run away. Didn't they say that the wolves had already left the vicinity of Stronghold 113 and headed into the mountain range that was several hundred kilometers away? Why had they suddenly reappeared here? The cliff was not far, and it would only take around 10 minutes for the wolves to get here. However, Ren Xiaosu was most worried about the whereabouts of the other wolves. What if they were nearby? Ren Xiaosu shouted, "Hurry into the canyon!" Lu Buletin was stunned. Get into the canyon? Are you crazy? If we enter the canyon, wouldn't we be digging our own graves? If we don't get into the canyon now, we'll all die. Ren Xiaosu rushed over to the side of the pickup and grabbed the large and rather intact rat carcass before running towards the canyon. He had the most experience with the wolves, so he knew best the terrifying opponents they would face if they did not make their escape now. The natural predators of wolves might have been eliminated by the stronghold when they were assigned to clear out the wilderness, leaving them with the freedom to move about fearlessly in the wilderness. Ren Xiaosu looked behind him and was surprised to see that the others were still in the mood to retrieve their belongings by the campfire and load them back into their vehicles. It was as though the wolves were still very far away. No one was particularly anxious about the situation. Moreover, Ren Xiaosu mentioned earlier that these wolves did not dare enter the canyon. That also gave these people a boost of confidence. As long as they could enter the canyon that was about 10 meters away, they would be safe. Ren Xiaosu thought, these people are really not afraid of dying. Why are they still packing their clothes at a time like this? Shouldn't they at least grab food and water first? At this moment, Ren Xiaosu realized that Yang Xiaojun, Su Xianchu, and him had the most awareness within the team. Su Xianchu immediately went to his vehicle to retrieve his gun and ammunition while Yang Xiaojun threatened a driver with a gun to get him into the vehicle to drive. But what could Ren Xiaosu do now? Surely he could not perish together with them here. As he ran into the canyon, he observed the cliffs on both sides. Although it looked precipitous, it did have some handholds to hold on to if he had to climb it. Ren Xiaosu was examining this because he knew that he had told the others that the wolves would not enter the canyon just so that he could hide the truth of how he survived. But he knew that the wolves had not hesitated at all when they chased him into the canyon that time. So the wolves would definitely chase after them, and it would be a major problem on how to escape at that time. The off-road vehicles were a great form of transportation. But it was difficult to say whether they could even outrun the wolves on flat ground, let alone on this rocky road in the canyon. A few days ago, the private troops skirmished with the wolves. Although there were several hundred soldiers with loaded guns, several dozen of them were still bitten to death by the wolves. With just under 20 of them, it was nowhere near enough. There was an appropriate saying for these events: you don't have to outrun wolves as long as you outrun everyone else. But a dozen odd people could not possibly slow the wolves' pace. If anything, all of them would perish. That was why Ren Xiaosu did not get into the vehicles immediately but ran towards the canyon instead. It was not because he made the choice in panic, but that he knew right from the start that he wouldn't be able to escape even if he got into a vehicle. He had to find another way. If he were left no other choice, he would have to climb the cliff. No matter how strong the wolves were, they couldn't possibly climb walls, right? Ren Xiaosu was not sure if he had enough strength to climb to the top, but that was the only way to survive. At this moment, someone started a vehicle and gunned it for the canyon. There were not enough vehicles for everyone now because the pickup had been totaled. Everyone was terrified after they spotted the wolves appearing at the edge of the forest. Those wolves were probably as tall as buffalo, and they seemed to be in no hurry as they moved slowly towards the humans. Lu Buletin kept screaming in horror, and many of the soldiers blanched. Those who were determined to pack their belongings now realized just how foolish they had been. If they hadn't gone to take their stuff, they would probably have already reached the inside of canyon by now. Wait, don't close the door! Someone shouted, squeeze in a little, we all can fit. But before the person saying that could squeeze into the vehicle, he was kicked out of the vehicle by Lu Buletin. After that, the vehicle door was slammed shut. "Start driving! Hurry up!" someone yelled. Ren Xiaosu was extremely calm at this moment. There was no right or wrong in the wilderness. Surviving was right, while dying was wrong. All he could do now was survive and became the last survivor. That was all. The 4 vehicles that were still working drove straight into the canyon. This was at the cost of leaving behind 2 people who did not manage to get in on time. Suddenly, they heard 2 screams from outside the canyon. Ren Xiaosu trembled as he realized that the wolves were faster than he had imagined. When the vehicles were passing by Ren Xiaosu, one of them actually stopped for him. He could see Yang Xiaojun pointing a gun at the driver's head from the back seat of the vehicle. She turned to Ren Xiaosu and said, "Get in." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He didn't expect that Yang Xiaojun would threaten the driver with a gun to stop the vehicle. Besides, he had no intention of getting into the vehicle. Could a vehicle outrun the wolves in this god-forsaken place? Yang Xiaojun seemed to realize that Ren Xiaosu was not budging. She pulled out a black pistol, an M9, with her other hand and pointed it at Ren Xiaosu. "Get into the vehicle." Ren Xiaosu was speechless. He turned around to look out of the canyon and was surprised by what he saw. Yang Xiaojun followed his gaze and looked back as well. She saw that the wolves had come to a stop outside the canyon. Several dozen huge wolves were quietly peering into the entrance of the canyon. Their fur was stained with blood. Lu Buletin watched the wolves from his vehicle and said in a startled manner, "So they really won't enter the canyon. We're safe." Everyone felt like they had survived a disaster after getting away from the wolves. Someone even started crying. "We've been saved." Lu Buletin muttered, "I never expected the refugee kid was telling the truth." But Ren Xiaosu wasn't at ease one bit, because he had lied to these people and did not expect the wolves to actually stop chasing them. What did this mean? It showed that some changes had really occurred in the Jing Mountains during the past year. This must have been the reason why the wolves had stopped in their tracks at this place. It also meant that it must have gotten much more dangerous in the Jing Mountains lying beyond the canyon than imagined. Those 5 words on the cliff that said, "Stop here, ye who live," was absolutely not a lie. What should they do? Someone got out of the vehicle and looked at the wolves that were standing outside the canyon. "Why don't we set up camp here and wait for the wolves to leave before we head back the way we came?" Ren Xiaosu thought, "I've never heard a dumber suggestion." He said, "If y'all want to head back, carry on. I'll never go back the same way." Su Xianchu nodded and said gravely, "That's right, there's no way we can turn back." In this sort of situation, the forest was essentially the wolves' home field. If you wanted to wait for them to leave, where would you expect them to go to? It would take 3 days to get back to the stronghold from here. In the space of 3 days, these wolves might even have enough time to turn into werewolves and give you a good thrashing while holding you up. Of course, the wolves couldn't possibly turn into werewolves. That was just an analogy. No one responded to Su Xianchu because everyone knew they would die no matter when they decided to head back. The only way that they could continue living was to head to Stronghold 112. There was no way back anymore. Lu Buletin looked at Ren Xiaosu and asked, "Why are you carrying that rat?" "To eat, of course." Ren Xiaosu said matter-of-factly. "What else would I do with it?" Lu Buletin nearly puked. "You're going to eat that?" Ren Xiaosu said, "All of the food is in the pickup, and the pickup's gone now. If I don't eat this, what should I eat? Also, it's only reasonable to eat them since they ate my crackers." Lu Buletin was speechless. That did sound rather reasonable. In actual fact, Ren Xiaosu knew that the biggest problems this group would face were the food and water supplies. Although Ren Xiaosu had grossed Lu Buletin out, he did not really intend to eat the rat. Compared to those in the stronghold, the refugees' perception of food was different. The refugees felt that anything could be eaten as long as it didn't kill them. The pickup was now destroyed, and the provisions had been shot to smithereens by the soldiers. Even if there were still food left, no one would dare retrieve it at the risk of being attacked by the wolves. As such, they would have to bear with the hunger and starvation that was to come. However, Ren Xiaosu was not afraid. Anyone but him could starve in this wilderness. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu was looking at Yang Xiaojun. Earlier, he thought that she wanted to save him when she pointed a gun at the driver. But when she pointed the gun at him as well, he realized she only needed a guide who was familiar with the environment. Or maybe Yang Xiaojun had realized it would get more difficult to find food from now on, while Ren Xiaosu had displayed skill in this aspect. That was why she had to bring along someone who could find food for her. As persons specialized in different professions, being skilled with firearms did not necessarily mean that they would be skilled at wilderness survival as well. But as it happened, Ren Xiaosu was also skilled at wilderness survival. Ren Xiaosu wondered what his wilderness survival proficiency would be if it were classified as a skill. He asked in his mind, "What's the proficiency of my wilderness survival?" "It can be evaluated." "You're at master level," the voice from the palace crisply answered. Ren Xiaosu was momentarily stunned as he did not expect that it could be assessed. He had never thought that his wilderness survival skill would be at master level. It felt amazing. For some reason, Ren Xiaosu was getting suspicious of Yang Xiaojun's identity. As someone living in the stronghold, she acted too decisively and never did anything sloppily. It was still the middle of the night, so everyone was extremely tired. Since the wolves did not dare to enter the canyon, they stopped to rest after walking several kilometers in. They stopped because they had to discuss the countermeasures to adopt. On top of that, they were afraid of what was beyond the canyon. They wanted to delay walking through the canyon for as long as they could. "We can only keep going forward," Su Xianchu said as he stood in the canyon. "This canyon is called the Howling Canyon. It looks calm now, but all of you have seen how strong the wind can get around here. I wouldn't be surprised if someone's been blown out of this canyon before. But there doesn't seem to be any wind here at night," Lu Buletin wondered. "From the evening until now, there hasn't been much wind. By parking the vehicles side by side to act as a shield, the wind shouldn't be much of a problem for us." "That won't do. We can rest here for now, but we have to leave before dawn," Su Xianchu refuted. "And we don't have any food left. Our top priority is to make it out of the canyon so that we can look for food. It doesn't seem like there's any food in this canyon." "Now that you mention it, I'm getting a little hungry," Lu Buletin murmured. During the night, everyone sat around the campfire that was set up. Because of their fear, they did not have much appetite. But it was 5 to 6 hours past dinner time, and everyone had expended a great deal of stamina and energy while making their escape, so they were all a little hungry. "If I had known, I would have gone to get the food supplies first," someone complained. Although the pickup was shot beyond recognition, the food was still edible. "What can we do now? We still have almost a fortnight's journey ahead of us. What can we eat and drink?" Lu Buletin asked. With this question, everyone turned their eyes to Ren Xiaosu. In everyone's opinion, Ren Xiaosu was amazing at surviving in the wilderness. Didn't Ren Xiaosu catch a large fish? However, Ren Xiaosu pointed to the rat at his feet. "Do y'all want to eat this?" Everyone fell silent, but they knew they would definitely eat the rat if they were at their wits' end. This was the reality of things. In fact, everyone in the convoy knew that Ren Xiaosu would definitely be unwilling to help them look for food. After all, the convoy did not provide Ren Xiaosu with any food before this. Not only did they ostracize him, they also deliberately made fun of him and constantly put him in difficult positions. As such, how could they expect that he'd help them find food? Some people suddenly started to grumble in their heads about Lu Buletin. What was wrong with giving Ren Xiaosu some food when there was plenty of provisions in the pickup? Look at how things have turned out. They had also never thought they would end up in this situation. Although they did not say anything at the time, they were all laughing when Lu Buletin refused to provide Ren Xiaosu with any food. Ren Xiaosu sneered in his mind at the time. It's every man for himself out here. Let's take a break for now. At dawn, we'll pass straight through the canyon, Su Xianchu decided. Once we get out of here, we'll all have to be careful. Let's be sure that there's no more danger before we talk about food. 1 or 2 days isn't enough to make us die of hunger. When there was a shortage of food in town, Ren Xiaosu saw someone eating tree bark and roots. After that, they even ate soil before eventually dying. Ren Xiaosu knew exactly what would happen to people when they got hungry. Right now, they would not eat the rat. But in another 2 days, they would get so desperate they would even eat soil. At this moment, Yang Xiaojun went over to Ren Xiaosu and handed him a dagger. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. "Are you giving that to me?" "I'm just lending it to you," Yang Xiaojun said. "Conditions?" Ren Xiaosu asked. These two people conducted themselves in a very straightforward manner. Love and hate didn't exist for no reason in this world, so there must be a reason why Yang Xiaojun was lending her dagger to Ren Xiaosu. "Food," Yang Xiaojun said. "Then it's not enough to just lend it to me." Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, "You'll have to give it to me." "Sure." Yang Xiaojun turned around and left. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. In fact, Yang Xiaojun had already planned to use the dagger as a trading condition right from the start. When she said that she would lend it to him, it was only to leave some room for negotiation. Ren Xiaosu did not know whether to laugh or cry. He felt that he must be more careful when dealing with Yang Xiaojun in the future. He inspected the dagger and could tell it was of much better quality than all of the metal weapons he had ever seen in Old Wang's grocery store. He figured this even though he did not understand much about knives. Ren Xiaosu put the dagger back into its sheath and hid it up his sleeve. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu looked horrified. He looked above the cliff, and everyone followed his gaze. "What's that up there?" Right as he finished speaking, the rattle of hard shells grinding against each other could be heard inside the canyon. Su Xianchu shone a bright flashlight over his head and saw an uncountable black swarm of insects crawling down the cliff walls. No one here had seen these bugs before. The patterns on the back of the black bugs' shells resembled the human face. Their mandibles were opening and closing as they wildly rushed down at the group of people at the bottom of the cliff wall. It was as though they were following some sort of command, as some of them leaped from a height onto Ren Xiaosu and the others. Ren Xiaosu pulled out his dagger and sliced apart a huge bug that had lunged for him. Then he shouted, "Run! What the hell is that?" Lu Buletin was scared to death. As the canyon was really windy most of the time, nobody knew where these face bugs usually hid. Now that they'd spotted their prey, they were turning out in full force. Was this what the wolves were afraid of? If Ren Xiaosu had known that there were so many of these face bugs in the canyon, he would not have come in no matter what. This time, he didn't even bother taking the rat. He had thought of climbing the cliff, but he was really glad that he didn't move faster earlier on. Otherwise, he would have died if he encountered these things midway up the climb. "Get into the vehicles!" Su Xianchu shouted to everyone. Ren Xiaosu slashed at 2 of the face bugs in succession. The 2 face bugs already had their mandibles open in midair as they lunged at him. Although their claws were not sharp, their mandibles were like hooks that could easily take a person's life. Ren Xiaosu did not run for it this time because he knew it would be safest to stay inside a vehicle. While everyone was still panicking, he got into one. Not only that, he even hoisted a driver in with him. As Ren Xiaosu did not know how to drive, he could not escape if he did not drag a driver around with him. He threw the driver into the driver's seat and shouted, "Drive, hurry up and drive." The driver looked at him innocently. "This is not the vehicle I was driving. I don't have the key for it." Damn! Ren Xiaosu felt that he was in a really disadvantageous position for not having driven a vehicle before. He did not even have the common sense they had in the stronghold to know that each vehicle needed separate keys to operate. But without any hesitation, he dragged the driver out of the vehicle. Ren Xiaosu bellowed, which one did you drive? The driver was in a state of confusion from being dragged around by Ren Xiaosu. Amid the chaotic group of people, he pointed at a vehicle and said, "That one." Ren Xiaosu dragged the driver over to that vehicle. At this moment, all the others were running madly for their lives. Some of them fled to the vehicles, some of them ran further into the canyon without getting into the vehicles, and some of them even ran towards the wolves. At this critical moment of life and death, the band members who were untrained and had never experienced such a situation before had lost their ability to think properly. It was at this time that the voice from the palace in Ren Xiaosu's mind intoned, "Quest, help at least 10 people escape from the canyon." "Help? Your sister?" Ren Xiaosu continued running to the vehicle while dragging the driver by his arm. Since he wouldn't be punished for not completing the quest, he couldn't care less about it. His own life was the priority. All of a sudden, he realized that someone was following him. When he turned around to look, he was surprised to see the perfect firearms proficiency marksman, Yang Xiaojun, following him. She looked like she was holding something in her hand, but Ren Xiaosu was too busy to see what it was. This girl must have been unwavering in her determination to escape with Ren Xiaosu. It looked like she felt that only by following Ren Xiaosu would she have a chance of survival. Ren Xiaosu didn't care. When he came to the vehicle and opened its door, he found a soldier inside shivering in fright in the driver's seat. Ren Xiaosu pulled him out in anger. "What are you doing here if you don't have the key? Are you waiting to die?" At this moment, 2 face bugs attempted to crawl into Ren Xiaosu's pants. However, they were blasted to pieces by Yang Xiaojun with 2 shots as soon as they approached Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu jumped into the back seats of the off-road vehicle with Yang Xiaojun following him. Ren Xiaosu shouted at the driver who was in a daze, "Start driving! What are you waiting for?" The driver had fallen into a stupor and was behaving mechanically. When Ren Xiaosu shouted at him, he hurriedly inserted the key and turned over the engine. He stepped on the gas but the vehicle did not move forward. When the driver realized that the handbrake was still on, he hurriedly released it and drove forward. Ren Xiaosu could finally heave a sigh of relief. Although the vehicles could not outrun the wolves, it could outrun the face bugs. There were already 2 vehicles driving in the distance ahead of them, and several people had been overwhelmed by the face bugs behind them. The swarm of black bugs engulfed their victims' bodies as they struggled in vain to break free by twisting and turning their bodies. Chewing sounds came from the black swarm of bugs as they gnawed on the blood and flesh, turning it into minced meat with their sharp mandibles. Ren Xiaosu fell silent. So this was the real wilderness? This was the world that humans would have to face in the future. The strange face bugs got attracted by the scent of flesh and blood and no longer went after the vehicles. Ren Xiaosu slumped in his seat and panted. As he had expended a lot of energy just now, he was a little exhausted. Even for him, it wasn't easy to drag an adult around while running around. Ren Xiaosu looked at Yang Xiaojun and saw her sitting calmly in the vehicle. She said, "You've got quite the strength." Ren Xiaosu ignored her and looked at the driver. He asked, "There aren't any more bugs chasing us, right?" "No more," the driver said as he slowly recovered from surviving disaster. He snapped out of his stupor and regained some awareness. He kept muttering in the driver's seat, "Thank you, I might not have lived if it weren't for you." Gratitude received from Sun Junzhen, +1. Ren Xiaosu thought about how his gratitude tokens had finally reached 74 and how he had not dragged a person around for nothing. He gave it some thought and said, "Don't be so grateful to me. I only needed you to drive the vehicle. It's all right. Whatever the reason, I still have to thank you. I'm sorry for what we did. You can rest assured that I'll repay you," Sun Junzhen said. Gratitude received from Sun Junzhen, +1. Ren Xiaosu was startled for a moment. He could actually receive more than 1 gratitude token for a single event? This was probably due to it being a life-saving grace, and Sun Junzhen was still in a state of shock. So all of his thanks were sincere. Ren Xiaosu tested him by saying, "Let me hear you thank me another time." Sun Junzhen was speechless for some time as his emotions turned unstable. Yang Xiaojun gave Ren Xiaosu a strange look. This young man was too calm as they were not clear of the danger yet. After waiting for a long time, his 76th gratitude token still did not come. He felt that he might have gotten a little too enthusiastic about this. If he had remained patient for a little longer, he might have gotten a few more of them. But one shouldn't be too greedy, so that would be the end of it. Ren Xiaosu noticed the puzzled expression on Yang Xiaojun's face. He cleared his throat and said, "I was just kidding. Let's get out of the canyon quickly and meet up with the others ahead of us before those face bugs catch up to us." All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu thought of the quest that was assigned by the palace. He didn't feel bad about it at all. Under such circumstances, he would never have given up his own life to save the others. Just as he had said to Yan Liuyuan before, if we ever feel a pang in our conscience, we must convince ourselves that it isn't so. Furthermore, his conscience was clear on this matter. But then, Ren Xiaosu heard the voice from his mind palace say, "Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength." What was with this? Did it mean that as long as he had acted to save those people and as long as 10 or more people in the team survived, the quest would be considered complete? This palace's judgment was way too random. The wolves and face bugs were like two species in the wilderness that did not intrude into each other's territories and coexisted in a unique way. The wolves looked to their wolf king as it turned around and trod back slowly towards the woods. It seemed that once it was sure that the prey had run off, it would depart without any hesitation. The driver, Sun Junzhen, said as he drove, "I wonder how many of us survived this time." "It's enough that we survived," Ren Xiaosu answered. Others surviving wasn't in his scope of considerations. In reality, it was better to have a larger group of people in the wilderness. After all, the more people they had, the greater their strength. Besides, they could all take care of each other if something were to happen. But now that Ren Xiaosu witnessed how these soldiers and band members reacted, it proved to him that these people were definitely not dependable. Not only they were not dependable, but he might even get killed through their actions if he was not careful enough. "Look, there are so many skeletons around here!" Sun Junzhen suddenly shouted. As the vehicle passed through the canyon, they saw several dozen human skeletons scattered in grotesque fashion throughout the canyon. "I'm afraid that these might be left by the face bugs," Ren Xiaosu calmly said. Now that he thought about it, Ren Xiaosu, who remained the calmest at the time, had been able to observe the face bugs while he was retreating back to the vehicle. He remembered that not every face bug had a human face on the back of their shells. Was it because they were not fully grown yet? Or was it because the faces would only appear after they ate a human? In a strange place like this, Ren Xiaosu assumed the most horrifying possibilities. Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu felt a shiver running down his spine. Why did it feel like these face bugs had swallowed the souls of their victims? The victims' souls were then hideously displayed on the back of the face bugs' shells. The convoy originally had 6 vehicles, but they only possessed 3 now. It took them more than 10 minutes to pass through the entirety of the canyon. The moment the vehicle drove out of the canyon, Ren Xiaosu, Yang Xiaojun, and Sun Junzhen were stunned by what they saw. As it was still late at night, the canyon was dark and cryptic. The only light came from the vehicle's headlights. But outside the canyon, stars hung in a picturesque scene in the sky overhead. It felt like it was right in front of them. Furthermore, the vegetation on the ground was oddly dense with many fireflies among the trees. The surrounding mountains seemed to have deliberately marked out this huge garden as an immortal paradise. They slowly got out of the vehicle and took in everything the night could offer. Sun Junzhen couldn't help himself and walked towards the woods with a look of longing on his face. However, Ren Xiaosu slapped his face. "You still want to go into that strange forest?" Those living in the stronghold were attracted to beauty. But for Ren Xiaosu, the beauty that existed in nature was inherently full of dangers. To survive in the wilderness, they had to understand that the more beautiful a snake looked, the more dangerous was. The prettier the mushrooms looked, the more poisonous they were. The more gorgeous spiders looked, the deadlier they were. So Ren Xiaosu naturally had some resistance towards beautiful things. He categorized the beauty of this wilderness as alluringly dangerous. Everyone had already gotten out of their vehicles. Ren Xiaosu looked around and found that Su Xianchu had indeed survived, as he was the first to react. But to his surprise, Lu Buletin survived as well. Ren Xiaosu did not hope Lu Buletin would die, but he was a little puzzled. How did a timid person like him manage to survive when he all could do was shout and scream after getting scared? Luo Xinyu also managed to survive. Ren Xiaosu remembered that Luo Xinyu had immediately gone to Su Xianchu after the face bugs appeared. It was probably under Su Xianchu's lead that she was fortunate enough to escape. Su Xianchu looked solemn as he counted the number of people. We only have 11 people left. When they came here, there was a total of 20 people. But now, only 11 of them remained, and they had not even reached the Jing Mountains yet. From here on out, they might face even more danger. It was difficult to say how many people could make it out of the Jing Mountains. I said that we should all head back, but you people still insisted on entering the canyon. That supernatural being cautioned us, so why couldn't you just heed the warning? Lu Buletin grumbled. Shut up, Luo Xinyu said coldly. Lu Buletin seemed to have regained his courage at this time and even mocked his boss, Luo Xinyu. I told you not to risk our lives by venturing outside the stronghold. Why didn't you listen to me? Are you satisfied now? Luo Xinyu was livid. You were the one who readily agreed when I brought it up. Would I dare disagree with you? Lu Buletin rebuked. Su Xianchu frowned as he looked at Lu Buletin and said, What's the use of saying all this now? Do you want to go back and find the wolves? We were also forced to enter inside the canyon. Everyone is lucky to have survived, so stop arguing already. The most important thing for us now is to work together to overcome this difficult situation. Lu Buletin and Luo Xinyu both kept quiet. Ren Xiaosu felt that he had to find another way out as he realized the team was falling apart. Any mention of working together now was empty talk. They could not keep driving. No one had expected the vegetation here to get as dense as a subtropical rainforest, which made driving through impossible. Let's get some rest first, Su Xianchu said wearily. They had yet to sleep soundly this entire evening as danger after danger kept coming at them. Everyone was on the verge of collapse at this point. Ren Xiaosu pretended to be thoroughly exhausted as he sat on the ground far away from the woods. Not only did everyone have no food at this moment, but they also had no tents and blankets. Ren Xiaosu suddenly regretted that he had forgotten to bring the rat carcass with him. He wondered if a face bug would turn into a rat face bug if it ate the rat carcass. It did not seem so bad once he thought of it that way. In fact, he was even looking forward to finding out if that would really happen. Sir. Luo Xinyu looked at Su Xianchu and asked, What exactly is the mission that requires you to go into the Jing Mountains? Ren Xiaosu looked at Su Xianchu. This was also a question he had. Su Xianchu hesitated for a moment but still did not tell them what he knew. However, Ren Xiaosu realized that Su Xianchu had something on his mind. Ren Xiaosu had some doubts about this. Was there any relationship between their mission objective and the changes that had been happening in the Jing Mountains? Su Xianchu suddenly said, Actually, we didn't expect there to be such great changes out here. Otherwise, it wouldn't have only been the 12 of us coming on this mission. What I can tell you is that we do not know what is going on around here at all. It's still uncertain if all of us can get out of here alive, so why can't you share your secret with us? Lu Buletin was on the verge of a breakdown. He just wanted to know what kind of situation he was in, so he was unwilling to give up on any possible leads. He clenched his teeth and said to Su Xianchu, We're all in the same boat. If you don't tell us, the secret could end up getting buried with us. Lu Buletin's face was almost touching Su Xianchu's face and his spittle was flying around. Su Xianchu pushed Lu Buletin aside and said, "You still dare to blame us when you were the ones who approached us in the first place? I heard that you've always wanted to go to the other strongholds, so it's not like you won't be heading there even without this mission. To be denying everything at this time, you're putting it like we're sending you to your deaths." Ren Xiaosu was watching the argument. All he lacked were some peanuts to munch on. All of a sudden, Yang Xiaojun said from beside him, "I'm hungry." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback and thought, "Why are you telling me that you are hungry for?" Yang Xiaojun said, "The dagger." "Oh, oh, oh." Ren Xiaosu nodded immediately. "Sit still, I'll get you something to eat right away. Is there anything that you don't eat?" "No," Yang Xiaojun said while sitting on the ground. Luo Xinyu had laid a piece of clothing on the ground before sitting down, but Yang Xiaojun was not particular about it. However, Ren Xiaosu was a little despondent because he had lost the rat he had been holding onto. He had to drag the driver around with one hand and hold his dagger in the other at the time, so he couldn't carry the rat around any longer. As such, it became a little difficult for him to find food now. Besides, the dense forest up ahead was way too strange. It was impossible to see what was happening inside during the night. He would have to wait until the daytime to examine the forest before he would dare to go in and find food. As a result, when Yang Xiaojun saw him looking somewhat stumped, she said, "I threw the rat into the trunk earlier." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He vaguely recalled that Yang Xiaojun was holding something in her hands amid the recent chaos. But he was in such a hurry that he didn't get a careful look at it. So the thing she was carrying turned out to be the large rat. It had to be said that Yang Xiaojun's proactiveness had saved Ren Xiaosu a lot of trouble. In the past, he was always alone in the wilderness with no one to help him. Hence, he needed to face the dangers and difficulties all by himself. Actually, some people in town had approached Ren Xiaosu to go hunting together, but he rejected them all. It was not that they were not competent enough, rather he could not trust them. As it was very easy to get exhausted in the wilderness, he found it was better to be in the company of wild animals rather than humans. Ren Xiaosu had previously thought about training Yan Liuyuan so that a huge burden could be lifted off his shoulders. But after some thought, he dismissed the idea entirely. He did not want to place Yan Liuyuan in any danger. Right now, Ren Xiaosu was feeling for the first time what it meant to have his own helper. However, Ren Xiaosu immediately banished the idea. This was purely a relationship for mutual benefit. They had formed a temporary alliance in the wilderness because they trusted each other's skills and resources. The alliance was a silent agreement, but they did not actually trust each other and just took what they needed from the partnership. Ren Xiaosu went to the vehicle and took the large rat out of the trunk. At this moment, even though the others were extremely hungry, they were not that desperate yet that they'd eat a rat. So when they saw Ren Xiaosu holding the rat, they felt a little nauseated at the thought of him eating it. While the others were busy discussing what to do, Yang Xiaojun collected some firewood and came back to start a fire. Ren Xiaosu reminded her softly, "When you come out of the forest, make your retreat facing it." Yang Xiaojun raised her eyebrows and asked, "Why?" "Because the big cats get tempted to make a sneak attack due to their instincts. It's something that I feel they don't even have any control over. It's just what cats do," Ren Xiaosu explained. "There are actually many wild felines in the wilderness. Mr. Zhang once mentioned that the wild felines could have descended from the domesticated cats that existed before the cataclysm. Without their owners, they could only go live in the wilderness. Gradually, their behavior turned feral as a result of living in the wild. Furthermore, the wild felines are getting larger and larger, and they're getting incredibly lethal as well." "Are they that dangerous?" Yang Xiaojun asked. "Yes, very dangerous. But they might not attack you when you're facing them, so don't ever turn your back on the forest. No one knows what's hiding in it," Ren Xiaosu said. Ren Xiaosu shared a few more things with Yang Xiaojun because he was thinking of maintaining this short-term alliance a little longer to improve his chances of survival. Ren Xiaosu started cutting open the rat with the dagger. Honestly, he had planned to use the rat meat to catch centipedes. Compared to the rat meat, Ren Xiaosu thought that roasted centipedes tasted better. But he had no other choice now. After the interaction with the face bugs, Ren Xiaosu was a little worried that he might end up catching something even stranger. He quickly cut off the thick and muscular hind legs of the rat and handed them to Yang Xiaojun to roast over the fire. It didn't take 10 seconds before the aroma of the meat drifted a dozen meters away. Prior to this, Lu Buletin and the others were having a heated discussion. But when they smelled the aroma of the meat, all of them swallowed hard. Whatever they were discussing was forgotten. Everyone quietly turned around and looked at Ren Xiaosu. However, they saw him throwing the rest of the rat into the forest with just a swing of his hand at this moment. Ren Xiaosu currently felt like he had infinite strength, and that meat vanished from sight with just a simple throw. Lu Buletin said anxiously, "Why did you throw the meat away? Since y'all don't want to eat it, why would I keep it here to attract the wild animals?" Ren Xiaosu glanced at them unhappily. "If you want to eat it, go and pick it up by yourself." Lu Buletin was stunned for a while. He then said with a sneer, "I will not eat something that disgusting." Ren Xiaosu calmly said, "That's because you haven't eaten something even more disgusting yet." No, these people had clearly eaten something even more disgusting before. In Ren Xiaosu's opinion, these people in the stronghold could even eat something like bird's nest, so what was the big deal with some rat meat? Ren Xiaosu had heard from Mr. Zhang that many of the aristocrats in the stronghold liked eating bird's nest. He wondered how the swallows had so much phlegm to make them. Perhaps all of those birds had suffered from tuberculosis? No wonder there was an idiom that went forced to go separate ways one. So that was what it meant. However, he didn't care much about these people. The plump rat meat that had been skinned was quickly roasted to a light brown color over the fire. Lu Buletin and the others had already ended their conversation as they couldn't stop swallowing their saliva. Everyone had been kept busy for the entire night. Due to their fear, they had no appetite during dinner. Now that they had spent the entire evening running for their lives, their stamina had almost been depleted. Everyone was so hungry that their stomachs were rumbling. Someone thought of going into the forest to pick up the remaining rat meat, but the problem was that Ren Xiaosu had thrown it too far away. Lu Buletin thought to himself, "Even if you don't want the others to have it, shouldn't you keep the rest for tomorrow?" However, Ren Xiaosu had a different thought. He would rather search for food again tomorrow or even go hungry than leave this strong scent of blood lingering on him. At this moment, Yang Xiaojun was quietly looking at the roasted rat meat with a small salt shaker in her hand. Just by looking at her, it was unimaginable that she would be a firearms master who could point a gun at others without warning. Ren Xiaosu suddenly remembered that the palace had rewarded him with a basic skill duplication scroll when he completed the quest in which he had to reject going with them to the Jing Mountains. That scroll had remained unused until now. There weren't any targets in town he could learn a skill from. But wasn't there a target sitting right beside him that he could learn a skill from? However, the scroll was just a basic one, so it could no longer help him improve his firearms skill. However, someone like Yang Xiaojun would possess other great skills, right? A basic scroll did not seem that hard to get. Ren Xiaosu felt that he could easily learn a few more life-saving skills from Yang Xiaojun. Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked in his mind, "Can you list all of Yang Xiaojun's skills to me?" He wanted to know what other worthy skills Yang Xiaojun had before making his final decision. Unauthorized to reveal, the voice from the palace answered firmly. Didn't I already learn a skill from her?" Ren Xiaosu asked in surprise. Unauthorized to reveal, the voice from the palace answered firmly again. Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and phrased his question in another way. "What's her combat skill level?" "Advanced," the voice from the palace said. Ren Xiaosu now understood that he could only ask the palace leading questions about certain skills. For example, the palace would only answer him if he asked specifically whether the target had combat skills, medical skills, etc. But if he wanted the palace to list all of the target's skills, the palace would ignore him. So this was all about guessing. Then what's the level of my combat skill? Ren Xiaosu asked again. Intermediate, the voice from the palace said. The combat skill he was referring to was actually just his experience of being in ruthless fights with others over the years, not something that he had carefully formed a doctrine around. For him, he knew exactly where on an opponent's body he could deal a fatal blow to. But compared to Yang Ziajin, what he knew about combat was not scientific or concrete. He only fought based on his intuition. Hence, Yang Ziajin was at an advanced level while he was only at an intermediate level. But if they really fought each other, it would still depend on their physicality. If Yang Ziajin's strength and dexterity were not as good as Ren Xiaosu's, or if their difference was too great, it would be useless even if she had a higher level of combat than him. Ren Xiaosu scrutinized Yang Ziajin and realized that she was not muscular at all. So she shouldn't be stronger than him, right? Ren Xiaosu was very tempted by the advanced combat skill because he understood how important this skill was. With advanced combat proficiency, not only would he be more confident in taking on others in a fight, but he would also be able to use the master skill duplication scroll if he met someone with a master level combat skill. Only by mastering an advanced skill could he use the key that was the master skill duplication scroll. Without the key, he would not be able to learn the target's master level skill even if they had one. Use the skill duplication scroll. Ren Xiaosu waited quietly after he finished speaking to the palace in his mind. He kept praying in his head, let it be the advanced combat skill. Let it be the advanced combat skill. A second later, the voice from the palace said, randomly copied target's advanced jump rope skill. Do you want to learn it? Ren Xiaosu was confused. Ren Xiaosu stared blankly at Yang Ziajin. He had not expected that a fine woman like her with perfect firearms proficiency would have a skill like jumping rope. Fucking jump rope. Why the hell had he copied a skill like that? Yang Ziajin seemed to have noticed Ren Xiaosu's gaze. She calmly turned around and asked, when will the meat be done roasting? Ren Xiaosu felt outraged right now. When will it be done roasting? Like I give a dog's bollocks about that. Could the skill duplication scroll be any more unreliable than this? Never mind the previous incident with the deception and bragging skills, he gained another lousy skill like jumping rope? Besides, why would a skill like this even have a level? What does an advanced jump rope skill involve? Can I do a backflip while jumping rope at the same time? Ren Xiaosu said with a dark expression, when we eat something in the wilderness, we must roast it a little longer, the same goes for the water. Water must be boiled for longer than 10 minutes before drinking it. Then Ren Xiaosu saw Yang Ziajin raise her arm, revealing a watch on her wrist. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. He had seen watches before, but he also knew that only the important people in the stronghold wore them. Ren Xiaosu asked, aren't you afraid that you'll fall sick from eating something from the wilderness? Yang Ziajin calmly said, there's only a chance to fall sick if I'm still alive. She then picked up the small salt shaker and sprinkled it over the rat meat. Nearby, Lu Buletin and the others were drooling from the sight. When they were having a conversation earlier, everyone didn't feel particularly hungry. But now that the aroma of food kept drifting towards them, Lu Buletin and the others felt as though there was a vacuum in their deflated stomachs. Did anyone bring along any food? Su Xianchuo asked. No, everyone shook their heads. Close by, Ren Xiaosu was amused to hear that. He had clearly seen some of them taking some food, but those who did so were now tacitly denying it. It seemed that everyone here knew that the food they were hiding could very well save their lives. How could something that could save their lives be shared with others? Furthermore, Ren Xiaosu suddenly realized that many of these soldiers from the private army did not have their guns with them anymore. Did they really throw away something that could protect their lives during the chaos just so they could run faster? How stupid were they? The stronghold's celebrity, Luo Xinyu, said unhappily, "How can we survive without food? Why didn't you all take any of the food with you?" A soldier sneered and said, "Didn't you also not take any?" Luo Xinyu took a subconscious step back. She realized some of the men around her had an indescribable malice in their eyes. As a celebrity in the stronghold, Luo Xinyu was not only beautiful in appearance, she also had a great figure. She loved wearing short skirts that exposed her thighs openly during summer in the stronghold. And those people in the stronghold could do nothing but look at her from afar because they were still civilized in there. But she was in the wilderness now. Many of those in the team had fallen into some kind of despair and wondered if they could walk out of here alive. Under such circumstances, the evil within them started to amplify. There was no civility, no law, and no morality here. Perhaps no one would learn about what happened here either. Luo Xinyu subconsciously inched closer to Ren Xiaosu's side. She had not expected that she would choose to trust the refugee who looked most like a wild animal over her own team members. Lu Buletin laughed loudly and said, "That's right, we should focus on working together now." Just a moment ago, a wicked thought entered Lu Buletin's mind. But he realized that he didn't have many teammates left on his side. If anything shameful happened here, and all of them somehow made it out of this place alive, these soldiers would definitely silence those who were not with the private army. "Where are we going to look for food?" Someone complained, "Do you guys still wanna enter this forest?" "I'm not going in." Su Xianchul looked at Ren Xiaosu. "Since you're the most knowledgeable in wilderness survival, you can help us look for food." All of a sudden, the voice from the palace in Ren Xiaosu's mind said, "Quest, help the team look for food." "Look for food?" Ren Xiaosu pondered it for a moment before pointing at a soldier next to Su Xianchul and said, "I saw him taking food from the pickup before we entered the canyon. There should be some food in his backpack." That soldier was dumbfounded. "You were told to look for food from the wilderness. What's with pointing out that I have food on me?" Quest complete. Awarded basic skill duplication scroll. Ren Xiaosu was amused. After all, the palace had only said to help the team look for food. It did not say where he had to look for it. Even if the food was someone else's, it was still considered food. He was really beginning to like the way the palace passed its judgment. Su Xianchul looked at the soldier next to him. "Take the food out." "Why should I take my food out?" The soldier turned hostile and said, "What were all of you doing when I went to get the food? Some of you went to take your clothes, tents, and that celebrity even went to get her makeup bag. Why should I share the food with you?" Ren Xiaosu said, "That sounds pretty reasonable." Everyone turned to look at him in silence. Honestly, Ren Xiaosu supported this person's argument. On one hand, he felt that the others had not behaved properly during the chaos. None of them rushed to grab any of the provisions, yet they wanted him to share his food with everyone else. This was moral coercion. But on the other hand, Ren Xiaosu was having so much fun watching this that he didn't see the need to take a side. He was not a good person to begin with anyway. At this moment, everyone ignored Ren Xiaosu. When Luo Xinyu went to sit down next to Ren Xiaosu, he pushed her away. So Luo Xinyu went to sit beside Yang Xiaojun. But Yang Xiaojun and Luo Xinyu's relationship seemed to be only that of an employer and employee. In this moment, Yang Xiaojun no longer cared to put on an act and ate the rat meat, ignoring Luo Xinyu. She was still holding the handgun but acted as though it had nothing to do with her. Su Xianchul looked at the soldier who had kept his food hidden and said, "Hand the food over. Since we're working together to get through these difficult times, we can't be so selfish. When day breaks, we'll naturally be able to find food. You won't starve to death. Who knows if we'll still be alive tomorrow?" The soldier said, "Besides, I was not the only person that went to grab provisions. Li Moxian and Zhang Yang also took some as well." Why should I be the only one to contribute my share of the food? Ren Xiaosu was stunned when he heard the name Li Moxian. So there were people with such crude names living in the stronghold as well? But more importantly, the atmosphere within the group had reached a freezing point. It was surprising that the teammates who had just survived a calamity together would immediately start quarreling over a little bit of food. Su Xianchu tactfully advised, "I'm doing this for the good of the whole team." The soldier next to him sneered and said, "Are you still trying to assert your authority? You have a gun, but so do I." After he said that, he tried to pull his gun from his waist, but Su Xianchu suddenly raised his leg and made his move. He kicked the soldier in his chest and sent him flying several meters. No one had expected that Su Xianchu would suddenly get physical and almost cripple someone with a single kick. Ren Xiaosu roughly gauged that he should be able to do the same as well with his current physical fitness. In fact, he might even have greater strength than Su Xianchu. Thinking of this, he felt a little more at ease. The soldier who got kicked could end up not being able to walk out of the forest alive. Su Xianchu's kick was so heavy that it must have inflicted an internal injury to him. Starting from now, he would have to carry this internal injury while moving around in the forest. Eventually, he would start getting more and more fatigued before he finally collapsed in the forest. It looked like Su Xianchu intended to use him as a warning to the others. Even if the team were to lose another member, he would not hesitate to do it. But before Su Xianchu could withdraw his leg, a soldier behind him launched an attack. The soldier pulled out a bayonet from his waist and stabbed it towards Su Xianchu. It seemed that he intended to stab Su Xianchu to death while he was dealing with the others. This time, even Yang Xiaojun stopped chewing her food. If this stab went in successfully, Su Xianchu would die for sure. Wait! Ren Xiaosu was suddenly surprised to see an identical shadow separating from Su Xianchu's body. That grey shadow was just like a duplicate of Su Xianchu. At first, Ren Xiaosu thought that he was just seeing things, but he then understood. A supernatural being. Su Xianchu turned out to be a supernatural being. It was no wonder Su Xianchu insisted on advancing even after he witnessed those strange occurrences. So it was because he had something to rely on. Ren Xiaosu had long felt that something was amiss. No matter how badly Su Xianchu wanted to complete the mission, and how worried he was about getting expelled from the stronghold, surely he couldn't have such disregard for his life, right? So it was not because Su Xianchu was unafraid of dying, it was because he had a secret. When faced with the sneak attack by the bayonet, the grey shadow spun around. It behaved just like a real person as it firmly grabbed the incoming bayonet. This grey shadow was even faster and more powerful than Su Xianchu. Moreover, it seemed that the grey shadow was unafraid of sharp weapons since it grabbed hold of the bayonet with its bare hands. In the blink of an eye, the soldier holding the bayonet was left in a state of confusion. He did not expect that he would be confronted with a supernatural being, nor did he expect that the opponent would dare to grab hold of the bayonet with its bare hands. While the soldier was distracted, the grey shadow grabbed the bayonet from him and ruthlessly stabbed it into his abdomen. Everyone at the campsite fell silent. Only the sound of their nervous panting could be heard. The soldier slowly fell to the ground, and the blood that appeared purple in the moonlight seeped into the soil, turning it black. But the soldier did not die on the spot from his injury. He was still breathing as he lay on the ground. The soldier who had been kicked to the ground earlier struggled to pull out his pistol before raising it and shooting. However, a shocking scene happened. That grey shadow actually stood in front of Su Xianchu and completely shielded him from the bullets. There was a rippling effect on the grey shadow as the bullets it blocked fell onto the ground one by one. Some of them had wanted to accuse Su Xianchu of killing their compatriots, but they no longer dared to speak out now. Everyone looked at Su Xianchu in shock. Was his power to create an identical shadow of himself? But the shadow was obviously a little stronger than Su Xianchu himself. Moreover, even gunfire could not penetrate the grey shadow. So this was what a real supernatural being was like? While Ren Xiaosu was pondering things, he realized Su Xianchu's face had turned a little pale. Did this mean that there was an effect on the wielder's body when the grey shadow shielded him against the bullets? The two instances of Su Xianchu then looked around and surveyed the situation. Afterwards, the grey shadow slowly moved towards the original Su Xianchu and merged right back into him from behind. But to his surprise, it turned out to be Su Xianchu, the most inconspicuous person in the team. Regarding Yang Xiaojun, Ren Xiaosu had at least already learned some information about her and knew that she was dangerous. But Ren Xiaosu had never thought much of Su Xianchu at all. However, this was also because Su Xianchu's power was easy to hide. Although the grey shadow was extremely strong, Su Xianchu was just an ordinary soldier. This left Ren Xiaosu unable to assess him. What a pity! If only he had a master skill duplication scroll. He could immediately use it on Su Xianchu. If he were lucky enough to copy Su Xianchu's skill, Ren Xiaosu would have even more trump cards for the journey. However, Ren Xiaosu had never seen a master skill duplication scroll since the palace was activated. He believed that it must be very rare for it to appear. At this moment, Su Xianchu let out a sigh and said, "I just wanted to bring everyone out of here. I wasn't intending to hurt anyone." Ren Xiaosu observed from the side but could not tell whether Su Xianchu was being sincere. In fact, he did not have a bad impression of Su Xianchu. Previously, when Lu Buletin and the rest of the others ostracized him, Su Xianchu did not join in doing so. But of course, Ren Xiaosu did not have a good impression of him either. If that contentious soldier had not pulled out his pistol just now, Su Xianchu might not have made a move. Ren Xiaosu turned around and looked at Yang Xiaojun. He saw that Yang Xiaojun had reverted to her previously calm state. It was as though she was not interested in supernatural beings at all. "Aren't you curious?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "I am," Yang Xiaojun said calmly. Ren Xiaosu was speechless. This curiosity she had was too perfunctory. Suddenly, Su Xianchu looked at Ren Xiaosu and said, "Aren't you a doctor? Can you take a look at their injuries? Before joining the group, Wang Kongyang told me about you, so you don't have to pretend." Ren Xiaosu simply stood up and went to the soldier who got stabbed and squatted down beside him. Then he turned to Su Xianchu and said, "He's quite badly hurt but there are no medical supplies in the wilderness." At this moment, the soldier asked with a pale face, "How long can I still live for?" Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and said, 10 minutes." The soldier was stunned. Ren Xiaosu looked at him seriously and said, 9, 8, 7, the soldier got scared. "I avoided kicking him in vulnerable spots and internal organs, so don't scare him like this." Su Xianchu said, "I heard from Wang Kongyang that you have an extremely effective medicine that is used to specially treat wounds. I don't believe that you didn't bring it out with you to the wilderness." Ren Xiaosu said unhappily, "My medicine is very expensive. Are you gonna pay for it? I'm only the guide, not your accompanying doctor. But if you want me to be that, you'll have to pay me more." Needless to say, Ren Xiaosu really did have 2 vials of the black medicine with him. Su Xianchu was taken aback. "I lost my money along the way." He turned his gaze to the others and thought of telling everyone to pool their money together to save their teammate's life. In reality, Su Xianchu didn't wish to kill anyone. He was only hoping to deter the others from doing anything wrong. However, the others turned to look away as they were unwilling to help. Especially Luo Xinyu. This wounded soldier had kept looking at her with wicked intentions. Seeing that no one was willing to fork out any money, Ren Xiaosu was about to tell them to forget it. However, a weak voice came from the ground beside Ren Xiaosu. "I brought money." Ren Xiaosu thought about how strong this person's will to live was. He asked, "Where did you keep the money? Is it in the left pocket or the right pocket?" "I have to tell you, I don't know how to suture a wound, so it'll entirely depend on fate if the wound heals after applying the medicine." The others were stunned. Would it work if you only applied the medicine but not suture the wound? Luo Xinyu said, I have a sewing kit here, but I'll faint at the sight of blood. Let me do the sewing then, Su Xianchu said. Ren Xiaosu had already taken out a stack of money from the soldier's pocket. I won't overcharge you, so I'll just take 1,200 yuan. Okay. The soldier's mood became much better when he realized that he did not have to die. Then he said to Ren Xiaosu, thank you. Gratitude received from Wang Lei, +1. Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up as his gratitude tokens went up again. After Wang Lei's thanks, his tokens finally reached 77. He was another step closer to unlocking the weapon. The tension at the campsite eased up a little. Ren Xiaosu's antics had made the atmosphere less tense, and everyone also realized that even though Su Xianchu had injured someone decisively, he was actually not a ruthless and cruel person. If Su Xianchu were brutal, everyone would have to be careful of him. After all, it was very dangerous to have a supernatural being like him around them. While suturing the wound for the soldier, Su Xianchu said, I don't have to hide anything from you guys anymore. The people in the stronghold only found out that the ruins of a pre-cataclysm civilization existed in the Jing Mountains. They're only sending our private troops out here to draw up a map and chart out routes to facilitate the exploration by the main troops later on. Actually, we didn't even know what had happened out here before we came to this place. After I got here, I found that there was something wrong going on in the Jing Mountains. I was thinking that if the secret of the Jing Mountains could make the wild animals evolve, would it also prove to be useful to humans and help supernatural beings like us too? That's why I insisted on us advancing. Didn't you say before that you already gave up on the mission? Lu Buletin asked. At the time, I felt that it was getting too dangerous. I decided to give up to not expose my identity as a supernatural being. I can just follow the main troops from the stronghold and come back here again later since that would be much safer, Su Xianchu answered. Ren Xiaosu knew that Su Xianchu had really thought about giving up on the mission. After he said that, Su Xianchu paused for a while before continuing, but I can't return to the stronghold anymore. You've all seen the stronghold's treatment of the supernatural beings. If I were to go back, I would be more or less done for. So I'll head into the depths of the Jing Mountains to explore it. If you want to go to Stronghold 112, we'll split up here. I won't stop you either. The depths of the Jing Mountains and Stronghold 112 were in two different directions. One was to the northeast while the other was to the northwest. Everyone was faced with two choices. One was to let Su Xianchu depart from the team, while the other was to follow him. No one at the campsite spoke. It was as though they were all waiting for the others to make a decision first. I'll follow you. Yang Xiaojun said calmly, it's too dangerous here. The surest way of getting out alive is by following a supernatural being like you. Ren Xiaosu went through his memory and realized this was the most that Yang Xiaojun had spoken throughout their journey. But he felt that Yang Xiaojun was lying. Her original goal should be to get to the depths of the Jing Mountains as well. Ren Xiaosu was getting more and more suspicious of Yang Xiaojun. He felt that she might also be a supernatural being. But what Yang Xiaojun said was very reasonable. Too many dangers lurked around here. With a supernatural being around, he would make everyone feel more at ease. If they were without the protection of a supernatural being, even if they did not venture into the depths of the Jing Mountains, they might not be able to reach Stronghold 112 safely either. After a brief silence, someone else said, I'll follow too. I'm going to. Suddenly, everyone decided to follow Su Xianchu to the Jing Mountains. It looked like all of them were not dumb. Just then, Luo Xinyu whispered to Ren Xiaosu, are you going too? Ren Xiaosu was clearly taken aback. Why are you asking me? I'll go if you're going, Luo Xinyu said. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. Sis, we're not that familiar with each other, so why are you trying to make it seem like we're super close? He ignored Luo Xinyu. Instead, he turned to Su Xianchu and said, "I'll go with you too." A bright light suddenly appeared in the sky in the distance. Su Xianchu looked at the sky and said, "Let's quickly get some rest. Since all of you have decided to follow me, we'll set off once it's bright. Now remember, the entire team has to listen to my instructions. If anyone still goes against me, I won't hesitate to go hard on you." He then led the soldiers to pick up some branches and lashed them into a stretcher. The soldier who got kicked could still walk on his own, but the one who was stabbed couldn't. Su Xianchu was actually thinking of taking the wounded with them. All of them had to abandon their vehicles now that a dense forest had suddenly appeared. If they were to carry one more person, it would be a great burden for them. There was probably no one in the team that would be willing to carry the stretcher, as a normal adult man was really heavy. Even some adult women would be heavy, much less a man. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. Was Su Xianchu someone who was full of positive energy, or was he deliberately trying to win them over? The injured Wang Lei was almost moved to tears as he kept saying "Thank you, sir" to Su Xianchu. When Ren Xiaosu heard his thanks, he got a bold idea. After the stretcher was constructed, Su Xianchu asked, "Who's willing to carry him with me? Let me carry him." Ren Xiaosu stepped forward of his own initiative. Everyone around him was confused by this. "Ren Xiaosu, are you that nice?" Su Xianchu thought for a moment and said, "Since you're the most familiar with the wilderness, you should lead the way from the front. Besides, you're still young, so I'm afraid that you won't be able to carry the weight of an adult man." Ren Xiaosu was starting to get anxious. "No, I have to carry him today no matter what. I'll cut anyone that tries to vie with me to death." Everyone else was speechless. Everyone was dumbfounded. Do you even have to resort to threatening words to do a good deed these days? Half an hour later, Ren Xiaosu and Su Xianchu were carrying the stretcher together. But Ren Xiaosu did not find it heavy at all. After all, he was extraordinarily strong now. After Ren Xiaosu applied the medicine on Wang Lei thanked Ren Xiaosu. Gratitude token +1. When they carried Wang Lei thanked Ren Xiaosu. Gratitude token +1. Along the way, Ren Xiaosu showed a lot of concern to Wang Lei and kept checking with him if he was hungry or thirsty. With that, Wang Lei thanked him again. Gratitude token +1. Ren Xiaosu really did not expect to find a divine weapon he could spam increase his gratitude tokens with. In just half an hour, Ren Xiaosu's gratitude tokens reached 82. Su Xianchu found it a little strange. In his eyes, Ren Xiaosu was obviously the type of person who would not care about anyone other than himself. Why did he suddenly become such a good person then? He didn't believe it. But Su Xianchu kept thinking about this along the way. If Ren Xiaosu had an ulterior motive, what would he be after? However, he could not figure it out no matter how hard he thought. The dense forest was not easy to walk through. Ren Xiaosu had never come across such a thick forest before. He was last here just a year ago. But when he looked at the forest before him, it felt like it had been decades since he came here. This place had changed far too much. Ren Xiaosu was chatting on and off with Wang Lei, but his eyes were observing the surroundings at all times. As they were walked, Ren Xiaosu deliberately gazed at the place where he had thrown the rat. However, the rat's remains had already become a pile of bones after only a few hours. This showed that there must be some scavenger insects like ants nearby. In the process of advancing, Luo Xinyu stuck close to Su Xianchu as though she had developed a great interest in him. Ren Xiaosu saw that Luo Xinyu had almost glued her entire body onto Su Xianchu several times. However, Su Xianchu always kept a certain distance from her. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu felt a familiar air around Luo Xinyu as it reminded him of some of the women in town. So women from the stronghold would also subconsciously seek a supporting figure in a dangerous environment. Ren Xiaosu looked over to Yang Xiaojun again, but he only saw her holding her two guns and pointing them at the others at all times. Luo Xinyu and Yang Xiaojun were polar opposites. At noon, Su Xianchuo asked Ren Xiaosu, "Can you find some food for everyone here?" Ren Xiaosu said with his mind elsewhere, "I'm not a god. Do you think I can just find food whenever I want to? If I say that a boar will run into a tree, would a boar really run into a tree?" Just as he finished speaking, they heard a loud noise crash several hundred meters in front of them. Right after, the breaking of tree branches rang out. It was as though something had really run into a tree. Everyone looked at Ren Xiaosu strangely while Su Xianchuo led them and approached cautiously. When they saw it, they were surprised to find that a boar had really run into a tall tree. At this moment, the boar was struggling to get up as it laid beside the tree. However, it was so dazed after running into the tree that it could not get up at all. The grey shadow separated from Su Xianchuo and jumped several meters into the air. When it came back down again, it ruthlessly landed a punch on the boar's head that caused it to collapse to the ground. But nobody cared about the grey shadow. Instead, they were staring at Ren Xiaosu dumbfoundedly. Lu Buletin laughed and said, "We can have some game meat for lunch." Ren Xiaosu, "Well done. What you said has really come true." Everyone was smiling. It was always good to have something to eat, but only Ren Xiaosu did not smile. He turned around and looked in the direction of the town as he got worried for Yan Liuyuan. Only Ren Xiaosu knew that Yan Liuyuan must have made a wish for him again. He must have been suffering the pain brought on by the side effects right now. He could only hope that big sisters Xiaoyu and Zhang Jinglan would take good care of him. Ren Xiaosu fell silent. He decided to try his best to avoid saying such speculative words in the future. Otherwise, the luckier he got, the more dangerous it would be for Yan Liuyuan. Ren Xiaosu let out a sigh in his head. How stubborn! Right now, Ren Xiaosu had an unprecedented desire to return to town. He wanted to know if Yan Liuyuan was all right. However, Ren Xiaosu did not lower his guard as he still couldn't figure out why the fish scraps and bones had disappeared, as well as why Su Xia's body had vanished. They found a small clearing in the forest and started collecting a lot of firewood as they planned to set up camp here. As everyone did not get any sleep last night, they wanted to turn in early today. Otherwise, no one could bear it for much longer. Su Xianchuo dissected the boar with a bayonet. Soon, the scent of blood filled the entire clearing. Ren Xiaosu reminded him, "Don't think you can leave any unfinished food for tomorrow. A lot of the dangers in the wilderness are created by the scent of blood." Ren Xiaosu then pointed to the ground. A swarm of black ants had already gathered here. Each of them was about the size of a finger pad, and they looked exceptionally terrifying. They won't attack you when you're moving about during the day since they're just looking for the food source through the scent of blood. But by nighttime, you'll end up becoming their food if you sleep in an area filled with a bloody scent. The formic acid secreted by the ants after a bite is enough to make you feel like dying. Su Xianchuo nodded. Understood, thank you for the reminder. Gratitude received from Su Xianchuo, +1. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. It seemed like Su Xianchuo was quite a sincere person after all. At noon, everyone gorged themselves on the roasted pork as they were starving. While Ren Xiaosu was eating the meat, Luo Xinyu unexpectedly took a seat beside him. Luo Xinyu said innocently, "I feel that it's possible to lead an interesting life in the wilderness. It feels really romantic." Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, "This is about survival. There's nothing romantic about it." In the wilderness, Ren Xiaosu had never heard of the word romantic before. Besides, anything that occurred in the wilderness could never be associated with the word romantic at all. Sometimes, Ren Xiaosu felt that there was a huge gulf between his mindset as a refugee and those from the stronghold. Luo Xinyu ignored Ren Xiaosu's rebuttal and said to him, "Do you know that you are very charming?" Ren Xiaosu frowned. Did she come and find him after hitting a roadblock with Su Xianchuo? He pretended not to have heard her, but Luo Xinyu stayed beside him and did not leave. In fact, Luo Xinyu had her own plans. By following Ren Xiaosu, she would at least not go hungry in this place. The others might not have noticed, but Luo Xinyu had realized that Ren Xiaosu was definitely not an ordinary person. How could an ordinary young man drag an adult man around while making an escape? Even Su Xianchu would probably not be able to do this. As such, Luo Xinyu felt that men were most likely to behave impulsively during their adolescence. It was probably the same in the town as in the stronghold. All she needed to do was to be more friendly towards this young man, and he would be willing to go through all kinds of hardships for her. In fact, she would not even mind letting Ren Xiaosu take advantage of her for real. Did such incidents rarely happen in the stronghold? Hardly so. To put it bluntly, she felt insecure and wanted to look for someone she could use. In reality, Luo Xinyu could also express her interest to Su Xianchu. Before the expedition started, Luo Xinyu had approached Su Xianchu more than once to chat, but she was rebuffed by him every time. In Luo Xinyu's eyes, Su Xianchu was a relatively headstrong adult who knew what he wanted. If there were danger, it could be very possible that Su Xianchu would abandon her at once. As for Lu Buletin, needless to say, he was just a good-for-nothing. In her opinion, how could a refugee like Ren Xiaosu who had not seen the world yet possibly resist her charms? In fact, Luo Xinyu and Lu Buletin had a certain air to them when they faced the refugees. They regarded the refugees as inferior to those from the stronghold. They were not people, just goods or accessories. Ren Xiaosu controlled his tone and said to Luo Xinyu, "Lady, please stay away from me." Annoyed, Luo Xinyu decided she had to be more direct. She smiled and said, "Could there have been a misunderstanding between us?" "Actually, Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "What's with you?" Luo Xinyu leaned in closer to Ren Xiaosu as though she were whispering something secretive to him. She got so close that her body was nearly touching his arm. As she spoke, her breath smelled like flowers. "I like you." Ren Xiaosu's expression turned to one of fury. "You better watch your words." Luo Xinyu was surprised. Pfft! Yang Xiaojun, who was drinking from a water bottle beside them, spat out everything at once. Apparently realizing she shouldn't have reacted this way, she quickly pretended not to have heard anything. Meanwhile, Luo Xinyu never thought that Ren Xiaosu would react to her in such a way. Was this how a normal person would react? Who should be watching their words? He must be sick in the head, right? At this moment, Luo Xinyu started to wonder if she had made the wrong decision. What Luo Xinyu didn't know was that Ren Xiaosu had seen too many of such seduction cases during his time in town. Since the time he learned how to hunt, a lot of women threw themselves at him. That was why Yan Liuyuan was so wary of Xiaoyu at the beginning. Luo Xinyu still had the impression that he was quite inexperienced. But in actual fact, Ren Xiaosu had seen so much that it would likely scare her if she knew all about it. Ren Xiaosu sneered in his head. He wouldn't want a woman like Luo Xinyu even if she gave herself to him. It would be a waste of his food if he had to feed her. In the past, he thought that the people in the stronghold would all be smart. After all, Mr. Zhang had mentioned that most of the books were kept in the stronghold. Hence, Ren Xiaosu thought that the more that people read, the smarter they should be. However, both Lu Buletin and Luo Xinyu were shaking up his understanding of this. Of course, there were also smart people in the stronghold such as the two officers, Wang Kongyang and Su Xianchu. Luo Xinyu calmed down and said, "If you help me get out of here alive, I'll fight for 3 spots in the stronghold for you when we get back to stronghold 113. Ren Xiaosu got up to leave. "Who are you trying to bluff? You're making it sound like you call the shots in the stronghold." Ren Xiaosu was not foolish. He felt that if he used the skill duplication scroll on Luo Xinyu, he might just end up copying her advanced bragging skill. Many of these people came to the stronghold to seek refuge with their relatives but were turned away by the stronghold. So they had to settle down in town and slowly wait for an opportunity to come. If it was already so difficult for the relatives of important people to get into the stronghold, would Luo Xinyu's claims of giving away 3 spots even be possible? If you were really that influential, you wouldn't have had to make a deal with the soldiers to go to Stronghold 112. Shouldn't you have gotten them to escort you there directly? Stupid people think others are stupid. Ren Xiaosu felt that Luo Xinyu was going through too much trouble to achieve her objective. Even though he was a refugee, he did not lack judgment. If someone else were the guide, they might just believe her claims. However, Ren Xiaosu did not. If Ren Xiaosu accepted her terms, how would he find Luo Xinyu once she got back to the stronghold? What would prevent her from jumping ship? Besides, honestly speaking, Ren Xiaosu did not have a good impression of Luo Xinyu and Lu Buletin at all. Everyone was parched after having pork for lunch. However, all of their bottled water and food had been left behind in the pickup, or rather, most of their bottled water and food had been destroyed when Su Xianchuo and the others mercilessly shot at the provisions. Su Xianchuo looked at Ren Xiaosu and asked, "How can we find a source of water out here?" At this moment, the palace assigned a quest. Quest: teach everyone how to locate a source of water. You can only search for a river or collect dew from leaves. Ren Xiaosu did not hide information from them. But I don't recommend you go to the river bank. Based on my estimates, the nearest river is still quite a distance away. Just bear with it for now. You won't die of thirst yet. We'll collect dew tomorrow morning. Su Xianchu nodded and said, "Thank you." Gratitude received from Su Xianchu, +1. Ren Xiaosu waited for quite a while before asking in his mind, "Where's my reward?" However, the palace ignored him. Ren Xiaosu wondered what was going on. It was as though this was the first time the palace had witnessed Ren Xiaosu completing a quest without resorting to unconventional methods. Thus, the palace had some trouble making a decision on the outcome. After a long time, the voice from the palace in Ren Xiaosu's mind finally said, "Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Although the quest had been completed, it was not what he had expected. Why was he given additional strength again? Ren Xiaosu had been wondering if the palace would increase his strength and dexterity attributes in an even manner. But in the end, his dexterity still remained at 4.1 while his strength had already reached 7.5. With a few more quests, Ren Xiaosu's strength would probably hit 3 times that of what a normal adult had. Right now, Ren Xiaosu still had the 2 bottles of water he had traded half a fish for. It was not possible to hide them. After all, his jacket's pockets were only so big. Suddenly, Lu Buletin came to Ren Xiaosu and said, "Sell me a bottle for 1,000 yuan." Ren Xiaosu gave him a look. "I'm not selling." 2,000 yuan. Lu Buletin said eagerly, "Will you sell it to me for 2,000 yuan? I'm really thirsty." Ren Xiaosu felt that Lu Buletin was seriously a little dumb. He looked at Lu Buletin and said, "Money is of no use in a place like this. The value of food and water is priceless. If you want to drink water, go get it from the river bank yourself." Lu Buletin wanted to vent his anger at Ren Xiaosu. But he couldn't as he no longer had the bluster he had at the beginning. He also knew that Ren Xiaosu's role had become increasingly more important than his during the journey. Based on Su Xianchu's character, if there were any disputes or irreconcilable differences between the two of them, he would definitely choose to abandon Lu Buletin instead of Ren Xiaosu. When he first came out of the stronghold, Lu Buletin thought that the refugees were simply there to serve the stronghold, and those from stronghold like them would always be regarded as high and mighty. But now he was sobering up to the fact that it was not that way. Ren Xiaosu wiped his hands clean with some leaves picked from a tree. Then he went to look for Wang Lei and showered him with concern again to obtain more gratitude tokens. But how could there be an unlimited amount of gratitude tokens that he could gain from him? After receiving Ren Xiaosu's warm and passionate care, Wang Lei realized that something was off with how Ren Xiaosu was treating him. As a result, Ren Xiaosu did not get any more gratitude tokens from Wang Lei's thanks. When Ren Xiaosu recognized that he was not receiving any more gratitude tokens from Wang Lei, he decisively gave up on him. By now, his gratitude tokens were at 84. In the afternoon, Su Xianchul looked up at the sky and said, "This place is not suitable for setting up camp. We must find a place that is not as open to prevent wild animals from attacking us. Everyone, let's endure and keep going." Ren Xiaosu agreed with Su Xianchul's suggestion. This place had become too dangerous after a boar was killed and barbecued. It might seem like nothing was happening right now, but as the venomous snakes, bugs, and ants got more active at night, it could spell disaster for everyone when night fell. Didn't the rat that was dumped earlier become just a skeleton? Su Xianchul went to the stretcher and said to Ren Xiaosu, "Come, let's carry him together." Ren Xiaosu said unhappily, "Why would I carry him?" Su Xianchul and Wang Lei were confused. Ren Xiaosu looked at Lu Buletin and said, "Go and carry the stretcher. If you don't carry it, I'll chop you up." Lu Buletin nearly broke down. Had he gone crazy? The others at the campsite were shocked at this development. They thought, "Are you a schizo or what? Why has your attitude changed so quickly? Didn't you say that you would chop whoever tried to vie with you to carry the stretcher this morning?" Su Xianchul did not want to waste any more time. He said, "Everyone will take turns carrying the wounded except for the ladies. Some of you might also get hurt at some point. If you don't want to be left for dead when that happens, you should help out now." Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt that Su Xianchul was quite a rational person. No matter what went on with the team, he would try his best to get everyone back on track. Along the way, some misbehaving soldiers started getting closer to Luo Xinyu again. They would even pretend to casually brush their arms against Luo Xinyu when they passed her. But Luo Xinyu would keep anticipating it and try to avoid their advances. After which, some of the soldiers would laugh pervertedly. Logically speaking, Lu Buletin and Luo Xinyu should have a good relationship, but Lu Buletin didn't even dare to speak out when he saw this. How could he offend the soldiers? After hitting a roadblock with Su Xianchul and Ren Xiaosu, Luo Xinyu seemed to be somewhat at a loss. She did not know what to do and could only passively avoid them. Moreover, the soldiers were starting to reveal their bestial sides as they found themselves stuck in this seemingly dangerous situation in which they might not even survive until tomorrow. But Ren Xiaosu did not want to intervene. As the team moved forward, he remembered he had gained another skill duplication scroll. He wondered if he could copy Yang Xiaojin's advanced combat skill this time. However, when Ren Xiaosu raised his head to look for Yang Xiaojin, he saw her pointing a gun at a soldier's head. Yang Xiaojin turned to Ren Xiaosu and said, "His gun belongs to you now." Previously, Ren Xiaosu thought that Yang Xiaojin was also someone who didn't care about anyone other than herself. However, he never expected that she could not tolerate seeing Luo Xinyu being harassed by the soldiers. Perhaps that was the bottom line for women. The people at the front looked back at this commotion and wondered if a violent clash would occur between Yang Xiaojin and the soldiers. Ren Xiaosu looked at Su Xianchul and saw that he had frowned but was not about to step in. It looked like Su Xianchul also felt that these soldiers had gone too far. Meanwhile, none of the other soldiers dared to step forward or speak up for the soldier. It was clear at a glance their team was not united. However, Ren Xiaosu did not intend to act politely with them. He walked right next to the soldier and pulled out his gun from the holster. When these soldiers were escaping, they felt that their firearms were too heavy to lug around, so they threw away their rifles, only keeping their sidearms. The soldier said coldly, "Do you know how serious of a crime it is to seize a gun from a soldier?" Yang Xiaojin said calmly, "If you threaten me again, you just might die." Ren Xiaosu almost applauded when he heard that. She really was a decisive girl. When he pulled the soldier's gun out from the holster, the soldier used his right hand to clasp it tightly against his waist. He was attempting to quietly stop Ren Xiaosu from taking his gun. However, Ren Xiaosu's current strength was so great that it was unimaginable. He forcefully pried each of the soldier's fingers away. If this soldier hadn't given in midway, Ren Xiaosu would have broken his fingers on purpose. This was a gun. Ren Xiaosu could finally hold a gun openly. Ever since he acquired the advanced firearms proficiency, he never had the opportunity to handle a gun so openly. The soldier who had his gun seized looked at Ren Xiaosu. "Haven't you already taken the gun from me? Why are you still touching me? Where's the magazine?" Ren Xiaosu asked. The soldier was speechless. "It's on the left side of the uniform." As he let Ren Xiaosu continue searching his person, he sneered at Yang Xiaojun and said, "Even if you give him the gun, does he know how to use it? He's only a refugee." The others also felt that the soldier's words were not wrong. Only Yang Xiaojun was slightly doubtful of that when she saw the way Ren Xiaosu held the gun. Yang Xiaojun was undoubtedly the most knowledgeable on firearms of all the people here. Otherwise, the palace would not have evaluated her skill as perfect. So when the others thought that Ren Xiaosu would not know how to use a gun even if he were to carry one, she had already noticed that his stance of holding the gun was very natural and proficient. Even with his arm was lowered, it was still placed at the most suitable angle to raise the gun in an instant. This was not a skill a refugee should have. The others could not tell, but Yang Xiaojun definitely could. But she didn't dwell on this for too long. She just said to the soldier, "Get lost." Being stripped of their firearms was probably one of the greatest humiliations a soldier could experience. That soldier looked ghastly pale as he stood aside. When Su Xianchu saw that the matter had been resolved, he said, "Let's keep moving forward. We need to find a suitable campsite before sunset." Su Xianchu did not want to get involved in the mess that was going on in the team. He had nothing else on his mind other than getting to the Jing Mountains. Along the way, the soldiers drew a clear boundary between themselves and Luo Xinyu, Yang Xiaojun, and Ren Xiaosu. Both sides were keeping their distance from each other. However, Ren Xiaosu was thinking about something. If Yang Xiaojun insisted on helping Luo Xinyu, or even offered to help her get out of this place together, he would probably have no choice but to abandon their temporary alliance. At this moment, Luo Xinyu said to Yang Xiaojun, "Thank you for helping me. I hope that we can work together to get out of the Jing Mountains over the coming days." But Ren Xiaosu clearly noticed a moment of hesitation from Yang Xiaojun. Then Yang Xiaojun said to Luo Xinyu, "I'm not helping you for nothing. Give me back the money that I paid you first." Luo Xinyu was speechless for a moment. She took out 10,000 yuan from her bag and handed it to Yang Xiaojun. "Back then, you paid me 5,000 yuan. But I'll return 10,000 yuan to you. Take this as my gratitude to you." Yang Xiaojun evenly acknowledged her and pocketed the 10,000 yuan without standing on ceremony. Luo Xinyu smiled when she saw Yang Xiaojun accept the money. "Then you'll help me on this journey, right?" "Let me correct that." Yang Xiaojun said to Luo Xinyu, "I've never thought about helping you get out of the Jing Mountains. I can only ensure that you'll get to preserve your dignity when you die." Luo Xinyu was speechless. Listening to their conversation, Ren Xiaosu understood what Yang Xiaojun meant. She would only ensure that Luo Xinyu would not get violated by these soldiers. As for whether she would survive, she didn't care much about that. In reality, Luo Xinyu was also rather pitiable. Although she was the one who initiated their trip out from the stronghold, she couldn't trust a single person anymore. A fork appeared in the road. These were two mountain roads leading in two different directions. The canopy here was so tall it covered almost the entire sky. They could not even tell the position of the sun and which direction led to the Jing Mountains. Su Xianchu turned around and asked Ren Xiaosu, "Which way do we go?" At this moment, Ren Xiaosu heard the voice from the palace intone, "Quest, give directions." Ren Xiaosu pondered it for a moment before saying, "Go left." Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 dexterity. Ren Xiaosu could feel that his muscle density getting firmer again. He could finally confirm something. Strength and dexterity combined are what makes up true muscle density. It's not good enough to just increase strength or dexterity. At this moment, the soldier who had his gun seized said coldly, "Didn't you say that you haven't been out this far before? I remember you mentioning that you hid in the canyon for a few days before coming out. So how do you know which way to go?" Ren Xiaosu said calmly, "I don't." Su Xianchuo and Yang Xiaojun were speechless. Everyone was left speechless. "If you don't know the way, why did you tell us to go left?" However, Ren Xiaosu was not under any pressure. He was only asked to give them directions for the palace's quest. It did not say where he had to direct them. Whether or not he knew the correct way, all he had to do was point a way forward. He did not know the correct path, but the quest had to be completed. Su Xianchuo hesitated for a while and said, "Then why did you point to the left?" Ren Xiaosu said, "Although I don't know which way to go, I know that the Jing Mountains are on the left ahead of us." "Okay." Su Xianchuo nodded. "Then we'll go left. You can tell me when you spot a suitable place to set up camp." When Su Xianchuo made a decision in the wilderness, he would habitually turn to Ren Xiaosu for his opinion. And as the facts had shown, his opinions were generally correct. Ren Xiaosu would climb up any pine trees they came across along the way to pluck some pine cones and plump pine needles. The others had some misgivings. They could understand why he plucked the pine cones since those things were edible. But why did he pluck the pine needles? They saw Ren Xiaosu squeeze out a light green substance from the pine needles one by one and then lick it all up. He said to the others, "If you guys don't want to die of thirst, you can learn from me." Some of them hesitated as they did not know whether they should learn from him or not. In the end, only Yang Xiaojun and Su Xianchuo climbed up the pine tree without any hesitation. Someone lamented, "It's better off being an animal if I have to do this. How I wish that I can be reborn as an animal in my next life." Ren Xiaosu glanced at him. "Animals do not lead as carefree a life as you think. I've heard that giraffes, which are the tallest land animals around, can defend against their predators due to them being bigger in size. However, its mating process can get very complicated. That's why the male giraffe needs to drink the urine of the female to determine whether she's in heat before he starts courting her. If it doesn't turn out as he expects, the male giraffe will have drunk the urine for nothing." The rest of the team suspected that Ren Xiaosu was deliberately trying to gross them out. No, this refugee kid was definitely trying to gross them out. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu's confidence was boosted since he possessed a gun now. There were only 11 people and 7 guns within the entire group, with 3 of the guns already in the hands of Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun. Moreover, Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun had the advanced firearms skill and perfect firearms skill respectively. Unless they clashed head-on with Su Xianchuo, their simple alliance would definitely ensure them a complete victory over whoever they came up against. While waiting for everyone to pluck the pine needles and pine cones, Ren Xiaosu had nothing much to do. He then remembered his still unused skill duplication scroll. He glanced at Yang Xiaojun and said decisively in his mind, "Use the skill duplication scroll. Randomly copied target's advanced skill, bomb making." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He immediately learned the skill but was a little puzzled. What kind of training did Yang Xiaojun receive in the past? Why were all her skills so violent? Besides, the combination of her firearms, bomb making, and jumping rope skills were so mismatched. Were these skills really from the same person? Ren Xiaosu got curious. He asked in his mind, "Does the target have an assassination skill?" This information can be revealed if it's for a former target you've attempted to learn from. She has an advanced assassination skill. Ren Xiaosu suddenly thought of something and asked, "Does the target have nursery rhyme singing?" This information can be revealed if it's for a former target you've attempted to learn from. She has advanced nursery rhyme singing. Ren Xiaosu was left speechless. What a bunch of messed up skills. He felt like he must have been really crazy to ask those questions, but he never expected her to really have those skills, and they were even advanced skills too. By this time, the whole lot of them had finally finished plucking pine cones and pine needles. Ren Xiaosu sighed and said, "Can't y'all pluck them from different trees? By taking everything from the same tree, it's nearly been stripped bare by y'all." When everyone heard this, they looked up. Sure enough, the tree was nearly stripped bare. Ren Xiaosu thought for a while and said, "Shouldn't y'all be thanking me for teaching you how to survive in the wilderness?" The others were taken aback. Then several people thanked Ren Xiaosu. However, Ren Xiaosu discovered that only Su Xianchu and Yang Xiajin were sincere in thanking him. With his gratitude tokens at 86, Ren Xiaosu became even more eager to unlock the weapon. So he shifted his attention to the others around him. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu realized that Luo Xinyu's hands were still empty. Even Lu Buletin was holding several pine cones. When Luo Xinyu realized that Ren Xiaosu was staring at her, she said in embarrassment, "I can't climb up." Since when had Luo Xinyu, a celebrity from the stronghold, ever climbed a tall tree like that? Hence, she was the only one who was empty-handed. When does someone feel the loneliest? When everyone has something, but not you. For example, everyone has money, but not you. For example, everyone has pine cones, but not Luo Xinyu. Luo Xinyu hesitated for a bit before saying to Ren Xiaosu, "I'll pay you 10,000 yuan, so can you help me pluck some?" Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. He immediately stuffed all of the pine cones and pine needles that he had wrapped in his clothes into Luo Xinyu's arms. "You're my bro from now on." Luo Xinyu was surprised. "Thank you." Gratitude received from Luo Xinyu, +1. Ren Xiaosu had not sold his water earlier because bottled water was too precious. It was clean and convenient to carry around. But the pine cones and pine needles were different as they were readily available. Furthermore, Luo Xinyu offered a lot of money. What could he do with 10,000 yuan? He could use it to live the good life in town for up to 2 years. There wouldn't be a need to worry about food and clothing. In fact, you would never know whether you would become Ren Xiaosu's brother before giving money to him. This was also known as Schrodinger's brother 1. Luo Xinyu took the pine cones and pine needles from him. However, she realized that Ren Xiaosu did not go and pluck any more. She asked curiously, "Aren't you going to pluck some more pine cones? What are you going to eat at night?" Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "I'll eat the chocolate." Luo Xinyu was speechless. Ren Xiaosu still had the chocolate with him that he had traded with Luo Xinyu for. It happened that the chocolate had melted a little while he was carrying it on his person for the past few days. Although it was late fall, his body still transmitted heat through his pockets. At the beginning, he did not believe Yang Xiajin when she said the chocolate would melt. After all, he had never eaten chocolate before. He had planned on bringing it back for Yan Liuyuan to try, but it seemed that he could not bring it back. In an instant, Luo Xinyu's gratitude vanished. That chocolate was the one he had scammed from her. Before evening fell, Ren Xiaosu found a huge hollow that was suitable for setting up camp. A rock protruded out of a cliff, creating a huge overhang that formed a natural, semi-open shelter like a cave. Ren Xiaosu noticed some cirrocumulus clouds in the sky when he passed through a clearing. Although he did not understand the principle behind it, he knew it was a sign of rain. Now they could rest better as they found a cliff face that would shelter them from the wind and rain. While they settled down beneath this rocky overhang, the rain began to pour. Su Xianchu turned to Ren Xiaosu and asked, "Can we drink the rainwater?" No. Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "Even though it's not so acidic anymore, you can still die from drinking acid rain." Ren Xiaosu was still unsure of how acid rain formed and what criteria classified it as acid rain, so he could only use acidity to roughly describe the hazard level of acid rain. Suddenly, some strange sounds came from the forest outside the hollow. But it traveled far away in an instant, not giving Ren Xiaosu and company time to react. Right at this moment, the person deepest in the hollow said, "Look, someone etched some words over here." Ren Xiaosu and Su Xianchu went to the wall and were surprised to see two lines of crooked writing etched by someone at the top of the hollow. We saw some strange shadows moving in the forest. They've disappeared, all of them have disappeared. Pocket thanks. View all comments, rate this chapter, vote with power stone, send gifts. When everyone saw the two lines of writing, the atmosphere in the hollow plummeted to a freezing point. Since entering the forest today, the group did encounter any more dangers. Other than exhaustion from a sleepless night, no other strange occurrences took place. This gave everyone the wrong impression that this place was safer than the canyon and the other places they had been to earlier in the journey. They'd nearly even forgotten about the warning that was written outside the canyon. But it was all coming back to them at this moment. The missing corpse of Su Xia, the horrible face bugs, and those words carved on the cliff wall that warned, "Stop here, ye who live." Has anyone gone missing so far? Su Xianchu's first reaction was to count the number of people in their group. However, he found that no one was missing. Could someone be playing a trick on us by etching those words here? Lu Buletin wondered. There are no signs of any struggle in this hollow, and we didn't even see any skeletal remains of humans or wild animals along the way. Wait a minute. Lu Buletin's words startled Ren Xiaosu. Actually, that was the strangest thing that had been happening. Some skeletal remains would usually be scattered throughout the forest. Be it birds, snakes, or any larger wild animals, their skeletal remains should be commonly seen. But the strangest thing about this forest was that Ren Xiaosu had yet to come across any skeletal remains even once, other than the one belonging to the rat he had thrown away. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu wanted to turn back to confirm if the rat skeleton had disappeared as well. After all, it hadn't been thrown away for too long, and some bones still remained when he had gone to check on it in the morning. But by now, the bones might have disappeared. It was the same for Su Xia's body and the fish scraps and bones. There was something creepy about this huge forest. A soldier asked, "It seems like some people have been here within the past year, and it was even quite a large group too. But almost no one from Stronghold 113 have come out here to the Jing Mountains during this past year. It might have been the people from Stronghold 112 who were traveling to our stronghold, but something unexpected happened to them." Su Xianchu searched his memory. "But since we're the lowest ranking troops in the private army, we can't possibly know who's been here." Su Xianchu was right about that. They were the most insignificant people within the private army, so why would the higher UPS tell them all the information they knew? Someone said, "Could it be that we were sent here because something happened to the team that came out here? And when the higher UPS in the stronghold found out about it, they sent us in to investigate. If that team had carried a satellite phone, they should have been able to transmit information back to the stronghold, right?" This was the first time that Ren Xiaosu heard of the term satellite phone. It had not even been mentioned before by Mr. Zhang at school. He had wondered about this several times as well and believed that there should be some form of communication between the various strongholds. And it seemed that their communications were made through this satellite phone they were talking about. Ren Xiaosu asked Yang Xiaojin in a whisper, "What's a satellite phone? I've heard from Mr. Zhang that there's something called a telephone in the stronghold, but what's a satellite phone?" Yang Xiaojin looked at him and said, "Mankind has taken control of several satellites from before the cataclysm, so we can maintain communication between the various strongholds." Someone said indignantly, "If the higher UPS knew they'd gone missing, it's obvious they intend to send us to our deaths by sending us out here. Were they thinking of using human lives to confirm whether the news was true? If we die out here as well, it would mean that this place is really dangerous. It's no wonder that we weren't even given any satellite phones this time. It seems like they're trying to minimize their losses, right? Could our lives be worth less than a satellite phone?" Su Xianchu glanced at him and said, "Don't go making wild guesses when you have so little information. Also, your speculation isn't logical either." In reality, the soldier was too frightened at the moment and could not speak sensibly. As such, Su Xianchu did not agree with his assumptions. However, Ren Xiaosu took a closer look at the 2 lines of words and said, "What was used to etch these words in the wall? I think it might have been something like a bayonet. It's not possible to carve such deep marks into the rock surface using everyday items that normal people carry around." Su Xianchu nodded. "It should be the soldiers from Stronghold 112. He turned to everyone and said, "Sleep tight tonight. If anyone wants to head out of the hollow at night to relieve yourself, make sure to go together in groups of 3. This arrangement was made to prevent inexplicable disappearances from happening again. Even if they got into danger, it was unlikely that 3 people could not scream for help." Su Xianchu continued, "And tonight, everyone has to take turns to keep watch. How about this? I'll take the first shift before the others take over. The ladies don't need to keep watch." Ren Xiaosu accepted the arrangement but thought there wasn't really any point in keeping a night watch. Not only did they have to guard against external dangers, they also needed to guard against internal dangers from the team. After all, Yang Xiaojun and he had just seized a gun from a soldier, so it was quite likely that the soldier would try to sneak attack him in the middle of the night. But at this moment, Yang Xiaojun said to Ren Xiaosu, "You keep watch for the first half of the night while I'll take over for the second half." "Okay." Ren Xiaosu nodded. Their temporary alliance had another basic foundation: they did not have any reason to harm the other. "I'm going outside for a while," Yang Xiaojun said. Ren Xiaosu thought, "Aren't you afraid that something will happen to you?" He asked her, "Do you need me to go with you?" Yang Xiaojun paused for a while before saying in a low voice, "There's no need." Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. Isn't this girl a little too brave? Just what kind of skill is she hiding? Beside them, Luo Xinyu stood up and said, "Let me accompany you." She then turned to Ren Xiaosu and gave him a look. "You're really ignorant." Ren Xiaosu felt his face burning with embarrassment. He just realized what was going on. The 2 girls braved the rain and went outside. Su Xianchu saw them but did not say anything. A soldier whispered mockingly, "It would be such a pity if those 2 girls went missing." But less than 5 minutes later, Yang Xiaojun and Luo Xinyu returned to the hollow as though nothing had happened. Had something changed? Could it be that the team was not targeted by the strange shadows in the forest? When 2 soldiers saw that they had come back, they stood up and said, "We'll also go outside to relieve ourselves. Can't hold it in any longer." The 2 men had actually let the 2 girls go ahead to scout out the route before they dared to head outside themselves. Furthermore, the both of them nearly even pissed their pants out of fear. They really couldn't hold it in any longer. In fact, they had planned to relieve themselves in the hollow. But didn't Yang Xiaojun and Luo Xinyu come back just fine? So they had to muster up their courage and head outside. Su Xianchu nodded and said, "Come back quickly. Don't waste time smoking out there. Don't worry about it." The 2 soldiers put on their clothes and went out. Ren Xiaosu was eating the chocolate and watching Yang Xiaojun, who was drying herself in the hollow. Curious, he asked, "Didn't anything happen to you 2 out there?" "No," Yang Xiaojun replied simply. "Someone in the hollow started a fire. After everyone threw the pine cones into the fire, they started squeezing the liquid substance from the pine needles and licked it to quench their thirst. The pine cones crackled as they roasted in the fire. Everyone was warmed by it. They felt like they were getting brought back to life." Right then, Su Xianchu looked out of the hollow. "Those 2, why haven't they returned?" Since entering the forest today, the group did encounter any more dangers. Other than exhaustion from a sleepless night, no other strange occurrences took place. This gave everyone the wrong impression that this place was safer than the canyon and the other places they had been to earlier in the journey. They'd nearly even forgotten about the warning that was written outside the canyon. But it was all coming back to them at this moment. The missing corpse of Su Xia, the horrible face bugs, and those words carved on the cliff wall that warned, "Stop here, ye who live." Has anyone gone missing so far? Su Xianchu's first reaction was to count the number of people in their group. However, he found that no one was missing. Could someone be playing a trick on us by etching those words here? Lu Buletin wondered. There are no signs of any struggle in this hollow, and we didn't even see any skeletal remains of humans or wild animals along the way. Wait a minute. Lu Buletin's words startled Ren Xiaosu. Actually, that was the strangest thing that had been happening. Some skeletal remains would usually be scattered throughout the forest. Be it birds, snakes, or any larger wild animals, their skeletal remains should be commonly seen. But the strangest thing about this forest was that Ren Xiaosu had yet to come across any skeletal remains even once, other than the one belonging to the rat he had thrown away. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu wanted to turn back to confirm if the rat skeleton had disappeared as well. After all, it hadn't been thrown away for too long, and some bones still remained when he had gone to check on it in the morning. But by now, the bones might have disappeared. It was the same for Su Xia's body and the fish scraps and bones. There was something creepy about this huge forest. A soldier asked, "It seems like some people have been here within the past year, and it was even quite a large group too. But almost no one from Stronghold 113 have come out here to the Jing Mountains during this past year. It might have been the people from Stronghold 112 who were traveling to our stronghold, but something unexpected happened to them." Su Xianchu searched his memory. "But since we're the lowest ranking troops in the private army, we can't possibly know who's been here." Su Xianchu was right about that. They were the most insignificant people within the private army, so why would the higher UPS tell them all the information they knew? Someone said, "Could it be that we were sent here because something happened to the team that came out here? And when the higher UPS in the stronghold found out about it, they sent us in to investigate. If that team had carried a satellite phone, they should have been able to transmit information back to the stronghold, right?" This was the first time that Ren Xiaosu heard of the term satellite phone. It had not even been mentioned before by Mr. Zhang at school. He had wondered about this several times as well and believed that there should be some form of communication between the various strongholds. And it seemed that their communications were made through this satellite phone they were talking about. Ren Xiaosu asked Yang Xiaojin in a whisper, "What's a satellite phone? I've heard from Mr. Zhang that there's something called a telephone in the stronghold, but what's a satellite phone?" Yang Xiaojin looked at him and said, "Mankind has taken control of several satellites from before the cataclysm, so we can maintain communication between the various strongholds." Someone said indignantly, "If the higher UPS knew they'd gone missing, it's obvious they intend to send us to our deaths by sending us out here. Were they thinking of using human lives to confirm whether the news was true? If we die out here as well, it would mean that this place is really dangerous. It's no wonder that we weren't even given any satellite phones this time. It seems like they're trying to minimize their losses, right? Could our lives be worth less than a satellite phone?" Su Xianchu glanced at him and said, "Don't go making wild guesses when you have so little information. Also, your speculation isn't logical either." In reality, the soldier was too frightened at the moment and could not speak sensibly. As such, Su Xianchu did not agree with his assumptions. However, Ren Xiaosu took a closer look at the two lines of words and said, "What was used to etch these words in the wall? I think it might have been something like a bayonet. It's not possible to carve such deep marks into the rock surface using everyday items that normal people carry around." Su Xianchu nodded. "It should be the soldiers from Stronghold 112. He turned to everyone and said, "Sleep tight tonight. If anyone wants to head out of the hollow at night to relieve yourself, make sure to go together in groups of 3. This arrangement was made to prevent inexplicable disappearances from happening again. Even if they got into danger, it was unlikely that 3 people could not scream for help." Su Xianchu continued, "And tonight, everyone has to take turns to keep watch. How about this? I'll take the first shift before the others take over. The ladies don't need to keep watch. Ren Xiaosu accepted the arrangement but thought there wasn't really any point in keeping a night watch. Not only did they have to guard against external dangers, they also needed to guard against internal dangers from the team. After all, Yang Xiaojun and he had just seized a gun from a soldier, so it was quite likely that the soldier would try to sneak attack him in the middle of the night. But at this moment, Yang Xiaojun said to Ren Xiaosu, "You keep watch for the first half of the night while I'll take over for the second half." "Okay." Ren Xiaosu nodded. Their temporary alliance had another basic foundation: they did not have any reason to harm the other. "I'm going outside for a while," Yang Xiaojun said. Ren Xiaosu thought, "Aren't you afraid that something will happen to you?" He asked her, "Do you need me to go with you?" Yang Xiaojun paused for a while before saying in a low voice, "There's no need." Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. Isn't this girl a little too brave? Just what kind of skill is she hiding? Beside them, Luo Xinyu stood up and said, "Let me accompany you." She then turned to Ren Xiaosu and gave him a look. "You're really ignorant." Ren Xiaosu felt his face burning with embarrassment. He just realized what was going on. The two girls braved the rain and went outside. Su Xianchu saw them but did not say anything. A soldier whispered mockingly, "It would be such a pity if those two girls went missing." But less than 5 minutes later, Yang Xiaojun and Luo Xinyu returned to the hollow as though nothing had happened. Had something changed? Could it be that the team was not targeted by the strange shadows in the forest? When two soldiers saw that they had come back, they stood up and said, "We'll also go outside to relieve ourselves. Can't hold it in any longer." The two men had actually let the two girls go ahead to scout out the route before they dared to head outside themselves. Furthermore, the both of them nearly even pissed their pants out of fear. They really couldn't hold it in any longer. In fact, they had planned to relieve themselves in the hollow. But didn't Yang Xiaojun and Luo Xinyu come back just fine? So they had to muster up their courage and head outside. Su Xianchu nodded and said, "Come back quickly. Don't waste time smoking out there. Don't worry about it." The two soldiers put on their clothes and went out. Ren Xiaosu was eating the chocolate and watching Yang Xiaojun, who was drying herself in the hollow. Curious, he asked, "Didn't anything happen to you two out there?" "No," Yang Xiaojun replied simply. "Someone in the hollow started a fire. After everyone threw the pine cones into the fire, they started squeezing the liquid substance from the pine needles and licked it to quench their thirst. The pine cones crackled as they roasted in the fire. Everyone was warmed by it. They felt like they were getting brought back to life." Right then, Su Xianchul looked out of the hollow. "Those two, why haven't they returned?" But now that almost 10 minutes had passed, the two of them were still not back. Su Xianchu stood at the edge of the hollow and peered out into the forest. Although it was only evening, the sky had already turned black due to the rain. Could something have happened to them? Someone asked. But there wasn't any noise, someone said, curled up in the corner of the hollow. Surely they couldn't have been attacked at the same time and made no sound, right? Logically speaking, that should have been the case. But wasn't this exactly what made it even more frightening? Su Xianchu had instructed everyone to go out in groups, but even so, something still happened. Su Xianchu said, "Don't think too hard. They might have been delayed just a little. It's only been 10 minutes, after all." Everyone in the hollow became quiet. Although Su Xianchu comforted everyone by saying that, those two soldiers didn't reappear as time slowly ticked by. Su Xianchu said, "Who's willing to go and look for them with me?" Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. Su Xianchu was even willing to risk the unknown danger and acid rain to go into the forest and search for his subordinates. But no one in the hollow volunteered. Who would be willing to go out and seek death at a time like this? Some of the soldiers even urinated at the innermost part of the hollow and filled the entire hollow with the smell of urine. As a result, Ren Xiaosu and the others were forced to sit near the outer part of the hollow where there was ventilation. Although it was a little cold there, at least they didn't have to smell it. Su Xianzhou sighed and said, if you all don't help the others, don't blame others for not helping when the same happens to you. Ren Xiaosu was not worried about that since he did not expect anyone to save him. Even Yang Xiaojun, who was his ally, would probably abandon everyone in the event of any danger. As they were not related to one another, it was already great that they did not sabotage each other. The sound of rain pouring over the forest came from outside. Ren Xiaosu said to Yang Xiaojun, I'll keep watch for the first half of the night. You go and get some rest. The forest ground will become very difficult to walk through after the rain. It'll use up a lot of your stamina. Be careful of those soldiers too. They're up to no good. Ren Xiaosu had known ever since the two of them seized the gun that the soldiers would cluster together from time to time. This spelled potential trouble for them, but Ren Xiaosu had not figured out how to handle it yet. Yang Xiaojun nodded. Then she closed her eyes and leaned against the wall to get some rest. But even so, Yang Xiaojun's gun was still pointing at everyone, including Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu smiled and did not mind it. If it were him, he would have done the same. A team of 11 people had inexplicably turned into 9. Ren Xiaosu looked at the remaining soldiers in the hollow and saw some of them sitting and smoking. The cigarette smoke was still laced with a smell that nauseated Ren Xiaosu. He found it hard to imagine just how vulnerable the defenses of the stronghold was when even the soldiers of the stronghold were using such psychoactive drugs to stimulate themselves. Was this only happening in Stronghold 113 or were most of the soldiers from the other strongholds also the same? These soldiers had brought quite a lot of cigarettes along, and Lu Buletin had also prepared 10 packs for them. However, they lost most of them while they were making their escape. Right now, they only had around half a pack or a full pack left on each of them, while some of them did not even have any left at all. The group of people sitting there were smoking together, filling the entire hollow with smoke. Fortunately, Ren Xiaosu, Yang Xiaojun, and Luo Xinyu were all sitting at the outer edge of the hollow, so they were not that greatly affected. They heard one soldier saying to the others, "Lend me a cig. I've run out. I've run out too. This is the last cig I have." The soldier beside him moved a little to the other side. Actually, he still had more than half a pack left in his pocket, but the days ahead of them were still so long. Who the hell knew how long it'd be before they could finally get out of this place? He did not even have enough to spare for himself. The soldier who wanted to bum a cigarette looked to the others and said, "Lend me a cig. I'll return a pack to you when we get back to the stronghold." By this time, his withdrawals had kicked in. He didn't hesitate making a promise like that just so he could smoke a cigarette. And cigarettes were not cheap in the stronghold. "Who knows if we can even get back to the stronghold alive?" someone scoffed. "What are you going to pay with at that time? Your life." Ren Xiaosu sighed. These soldiers were really like a disorderly mob. While 2 of their comrades' lives were still at stake, they fell into infighting over some cigarettes. The soldier whose withdrawal symptoms were starting to kick in could only sit inside the hollow when he failed to get any cigarettes. Ren Xiaosu observed him as he started shivering while beads of sweat began forming on his forehead. Although these soldiers smoked a better quality of cigarettes than the town's workers, their withdrawal symptoms were more intense. If they encountered danger at this moment, this addict would probably not even able to stand up, let alone resist. Ren Xiaosu looked at Luo Xinyu, who was still awake, and said, "What on earth is it like, inside the stronghold you're from?" This was actually one question that Ren Xiaosu was most curious about, as he had always yearned to live in the stronghold, because all of the best quality daily necessities produced in town would get selected and transported into the stronghold. The people inside did not have to eat cornbread, could wash their faces every day, and it was said they had electricity as well. Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan used to think that the place was heaven, but now it seemed that it was not as beautiful as they had imagined. Luo Xinyu was delighted when Ren Xiaosu took the initiative to talk to her. She still needed to rely on him plenty during the journey. She explained in a whisper, "Actually, there's people who made them like this on purpose. A mutiny by the private army in one of the strongholds happened, and the overseers of the other strongholds slowly began bearing ill will for the soldiers. While the big shots hoped that there would be people to protect them, they wanted their soldiers to stay loyal and have no ambition. So these cigarettes are the best tool to make them lose their ambition. Ren Xiaosu asked, "Is smoking too much of this stuff okay?" "Of course not." Luo Xinyu said, "Some veterans in the stronghold behave like zombies. And some of their wives even ran off with others as a result. It's such a mess in the stronghold." Ren Xiaosu sighed. "That's nothing." Luo Xinyu said, "I've seen a 60-year-old woman with a dozen gigolos she's paying to support. You could say she's robbing the cradle." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "A 60-year-old? I don't think robbing the cradle properly describes that." Luo Xinyu was startled. "Then what would?" Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment before saying, "Having children in old age." Luo Xinyu was speechless. Luo Xinyu realized that Ren Xiaosu's brain was truly wired a little differently from others. It was no wonder the townspeople all said he was sick in the head. He was clearly a normal person, yet he exhibited signs of mental illness. Just how did his mind work? At this moment, someone in the cave exclaimed, "What is this? It's so wet." After he said that, the group ran out of the cave as though they received a great shock. Ren Xiaosu looked into the hollow but was puzzled. There was nothing inside. But when Ren Xiaosu saw this, he found a treasure. He said to the others, "Y'all can get water straight from here. The hollow ceiling is a natural filter that makes the water a little cleaner than well water. Of course, if you're still worried, you can also boil it before you drink it." Su Xianchuo asked seriously, "Are you sure this water is drinkable?" "Yes." Ren Xiaosu said, "It's probably one of the cleanest sources of water you can find in the wilderness. Sometimes, not even spring water is safer than this." When Su Xianchuo heard that, he grabbed his military-issue canteen to top up his water supply. Although the pine needles could replenish some water loss from the body, it was far too little. Those could only ensure that everyone would not die of thirst. Su Xianchuo did not hoard the water source for too long. After hanging his military-issue canteen over the campfire, he said to the others, "You guys should drink up too." The others were not like Su Xianchuo, who still had his military-issue canteen to hold the water and boil it with. They could only collect the water with their mouths, let alone boil it. The crowd was pushing and shoving under the water source. It was all right for the soldiers as each of them took turns to drink from it for a while. But Lu Buletin couldn't be in a more pathetic state since no one would let him have a taste of the water. After a while, a soldier said, fuming, "How is it enough for anyone to drink water one drop at a time? Ren Xiaosu still has 2 bottles of water in his pockets. He's making us lick the rock wall and the pine needles while he drinks from the bottle himself. Who knows if there's problems with the water?" Several soldiers got angry. However, Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojin each had a gun in their hands, so they did not dare to say anything in front of them. When Ren Xiaosu saw this, he wondered how great it would be if he could store his items in the palace. He could secretly put the bottled water into the palace tomorrow and claim to the others that he had accidentally lost it. That way, no one would target him anymore. Otherwise, if these people went crazy for the water, someone might even take the risk to attack him. Currently, the 2 bottles of water were in each side of his jacket pockets. He put his hands into the pockets and held the water bottles as he attempted to store them in the palace again. But the voice from the palace intoned, "Storage rights have not been obtained." Ren Xiaosu was upset and sullen when he heard the voice. "You should at least tell me how to obtain the rights, right? Why can I freely store the black medicine in the palace but not the bottled water? Why? Why can't the bottled water be stored?" As Ren Xiaosu retreated to one side, Luo Xinyu looked at him. "Why aren't you going over to drink the water?" Ren Xiaosu saw Luo Xinyu's skeptical look. It was obvious she did not believe he would be so generous. Ren Xiaosu grinned. I'm gonna drink the bottled water. Luo Xinyu was speechless. In this moment, Luo Xinyu realized that Ren Xiaosu was really talented at annoying people at any time. However, she did not know that Ren Xiaosu had actually given it careful consideration before deciding to leave the water source for the others. First of all, everyone was parched, and the water source that was dripping bit by bit would definitely be insufficient. As a supernatural being, Su Xianqiu could hoard the water source for as long as he wanted, and no one would dare to say a thing. But Ren Xiaosu wasn't one. Some people were already jealous of the fact that he still had 2 bottles of water on him. As such, he didn't need to hoard them. One of the principles of survival in the wilderness was to not be too greedy. Furthermore, Ren Xiaosu had to make Su Xianqiu understand that if he wanted to survive in the wilderness, the most indispensable person in the team was him, Ren Xiaosu. If Ren Xiaosu could get the support of a supernatural being like Su Xianqiu, wouldn't that be better? Also, the smell in the hollow was simply too pungent. In such a tense atmosphere, Luo Xinyu was initially terrified. As such, she chatted with Ren Xiaosu so she could alleviate the fear she was feeling. After all, it was always better to have someone to talk to. In fact, this method was extremely effective. When Ren Xiaosu spoke about having children in old age, Luo Xinyu didn't feel afraid anymore. There was only a string of ellipses on her mind. Ren Xiaosu asked, "Do you know where the cigarettes that the soldiers smoke come from? I don't think there's any suitable places near Stronghold 113 to grow something like that, right?" "You don't know?" Luo Xinyu asked, feeling puzzled. "Wang Fugui said that you had the backing of Luo Lan, so how can you possibly not know anything about it? What does Luo Lan have anything to do with it?" Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Although he had received a banner from Luo Lan, he and Boss Luo did not have any other dealings. Boss Luo is the representative of the Qing Consortium in Stronghold 113, Luo Xinyu explained. "What is his job title in the stronghold?" Ren Xiaosu asked. Although he heard Wang Fugui mention Boss Luo's name every day, Ren Xiaosu realized that he actually didn't know much about Boss Luo. Boss Luo doesn't have a job title. Luo Xinyu looked at Ren Xiaosu in surprise. "Alright, it looks like you really don't know anything. He only controls some factories that deal with metallurgy, water production, and chemical plants. If you have to ask what his title is, then he's strictly considered a businessman. How does a businessman get to call the shots in the stronghold?" Ren Xiaosu said after thinking for a moment. He had thought that Boss Luo was just a stronghold overseer. It's unnecessary for them to hold a job title. Luo Xinyu said helplessly, "They are like the sky above the stronghold overseers. When nothing happens, everyone lives peacefully together. But when something crops up, that businessman will definitely be the decision maker of the stronghold. Does he have an army around him?" Ren Xiaosu asked after some thought. Luo Xinyu glanced at him and said, "Yes, he has an army that is many times stronger than these private troops. The combat brigade that's stationed in Stronghold 113 is way beyond your imagination. They're nothing like these private troops you're watching." It meant that there were 2 different types of troops stationed at the stronghold. Although the stronghold had nominal overseers, their authority existed in name only. If they did not resist, the consortium would allow them to enjoy a life of luxury as their puppets. "But there's something I still don't understand." Ren Xiaosu asked, "Why don't they just take control of the stronghold and become the overseers themselves? Isn't it unnecessary to support puppets?" "Because the Qing Consortium is not the only organization in this world," Luo Xinyu said. Hearing this, Ren Xiaosu gained an understanding. The control of the 100-odd strongholds was in the hands of just a few organizations. Although they worked together to take control of the strongholds, there was a delicate balance of power between them. By using some strange methods of cooperation, they would seize resources for themselves. So the Qing Consortium was the one who supplied those cigarettes to Stronghold 113? Ren Xiaosu asked. Ren Xiaosu nodded. It looked like he could not measure the consortium's power based on the private army's strength. Ren Xiaosu had learned enough from Luo Xinyu for the day and had to digest all of this information. I'll ask one final question. Ren Xiaosu asked, why did you choose a person like Lu Buletin as your manager? Luo Xinyu was not exactly stupid either, so why did she choose Lu Buletin? Luo Xinyu explained, he's the younger brother of a unit chief in the Strongholds Logistics Division. Ren Xiaosu could more or less understand some of the reasons behind this, but he didn't exactly know what kind of authority a unit chief in the Logistics Division had. Luo Xinyu felt her relationship with Yang Xiaojun and Ren Xiaosu had become a little closer. She hesitated for a moment before saying, can you help me make it out of this place alive? I have nothing left out here in the wilderness and can only depend on the two of you. Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, it's not like you have nothing left. Luo Xinyu was taken aback. What do you mean? You still have the cheek to ask me to get you out of here alive. Having said that, Ren Xiaosu ignored Luo Xinyu. Luo Xinyu was left confused by Ren Xiaosu on this dark and rainy night. She still had something left? She still had the cheek to ask him for something? What fucking language proficiency is this? Are we even speaking the same language? It was at this time that Luo Xinyu realized that her close relationship was only an illusion. In reality, Ren Xiaosu found Luo Xinyu to be quite pitiable. She was all alone in the wilderness with no one to trust and had no one who was willing to help her. She was even surrounded by these ruffian soldiers who kept trying to take advantage of her. But who wasn't pitiable? Yan Liuyuan, who was suffering in town from the pain brought on by the side effects of his wish, wasn't he pitiable? If Ren Xiaosu promised to help get someone out of this place, that would be irresponsible towards Yan Liuyuan. As long as Ren Xiaosu relied on his luck, Yan Liuyuan was bound to suffer even more from the side effects. Although Yan Liuyuan would usually only get a headache or fever after making a wish, the problem was that if Ren Xiaosu used his luck to avoid death, Yan Liuyuan would not only be suffering simple side effects like a headache or fever. This was a power governed by the law of conservation. If one party got luckier, the other would become unluckier. The moment Yan Liuyuan made a wish for Ren Xiaosu, he had placed his life in Ren Xiaosu's hands. Therefore, for Yan Liuyuan's sake, Ren Xiaosu could not promise anyone that he would help them get out of here alive. The other people's lives were not as valuable as Yan Liuyuan's. When Yang Xiaojun woke up in the middle of the night, she looked at Ren Xiaosu and said, "It's your turn to sleep." Ren Xiaosu nodded. Then he closed his eyes to get some sleep. He had not gotten any rest for nearly 30 hours. Even that was too much for him to bear in his current shape. Ren Xiaosu kept thinking about a couple questions while in a semi-conscious state. What exactly is Yang Xiaojun's identity? Does she belong to the so-called combat brigade of the Qing Consortium? No, that couldn't be right. If she were from the combat brigade, she wouldn't have to hide her identity to join the team, right? Besides, she even had to pay Luo Xinyu to join them. In Ren Xiaosu's opinion, if the Qing Consortium's combat brigade stationed at Stronghold 113 were to send someone to join them for the mission, wouldn't the soldiers from the private army revere her like a god? After all, that was the authority that really had the power to control life and death in the stronghold. Ren Xiaosu could not figure out Yang Xiaojun's motive, so he could only remain suspicious of her identity. The hollow was completely quiet in the early morning. Yang Xiaojun was feeling energetic again after waking up. As she had received relevant training in this field, the way she slept was beyond most people's imagination. She was actually able to stay alert while sleeping. This was something that normal people could not understand, just like how normal people in the current day still could not understand supernatural beings. The rain outside came to a stop. Just as Ren Xiaosu had said, the forest ground became quagmire of mud after the rain. Some people would probably fall behind during tomorrow's journey. Some of the soldiers in the hollow were still not asleep and were whispering about something. Meanwhile, Lu Buletin was catching the dripping water with his mouth open. It was finally his turn to drink now that everyone else had enough. Yang Ziajin was opening the pine cones left over from the evening. She took out the pine nuts from within and put them into her mouth one by one to replenish the nutrients she needed. Yang Ziajin, who was sitting across from Ren Xiaosu, was looking at him sleeping as she ate her pine nuts. Was he really asleep or was he in a semi-conscious state? However, Yang Ziajin heard Ren Xiaosu start snoring. She wasn't the only one who heard it, the entire hollow heard it as well. The snoring was way too loud. At this moment, two soldiers got up and said to Su Xianchu, "We'll take over the watch from you. You should get some rest now." Su Xianchu nodded. "Be on your toes, don't lower your guard." "Don't worry," one of the soldiers replied. The two soldiers slowly walked to the entrance of the hollow, as though they were going to keep watch there. Yang Ziajin lowered her head and hid her gaze under her cap. When she saw the two ruffian soldiers, the corners of her mouth curled up a tad. This was because she noticed that Ren Xiaosu's snoring had stopped. But the two soldiers did not seem to have noticed anything. One of them remarked, "I wonder if we can get back to the stronghold alive." "Who knows," the other replied. It seemed like the two men were having a normal conversation. But when they passed Yang Ziajin and Ren Xiaosu, they sprang into action. As the rain had stopped, the hollow was completely silent. The two soldiers, standing on the left and right side, whipped out their bayonets. They were actually thinking of sneak attacking both Ren Xiaosu and Yang Ziajin. Which would react faster within 3 steps? A person or a gun? This question had been discussed by many people before, and everyone felt that a person could probably react faster in the space of 3 steps. But right now, the two assailants were only 1 step away from Ren Xiaosu and Yang Ziajin. Within such a short distance, it would be almost impossible for Ren Xiaosu and Yang Ziajin to pull out their guns. They were not foolish. Therefore, they waited until the wee hours of the morning when Ren Xiaosu had just fallen asleep and Yang Ziajin was just waking up to carry out their plan. A person tended to have stiff muscles when they were just waking up from sleep. This was not due to being in bad shape, rather, the body's mobility has not fully kicked in yet. They had probably decided to launch a sneak attack on Yang Ziajin and Ren Xiaosu for their guns, or their water, or for Luo Xinyu. However, they did not know what kind of opponents they were about to face. Bang! With a gunshot, the ruffian soldier standing before Yang Ziajin looked at the bleeding wound in his abdomen in disbelief. He clearly saw that Yang Ziajin had been peeling pine nuts, and her gun was not out. So how did Yang Ziajin manage to react so much quicker than him? Meanwhile, the assailant on the other side let out a pained cry. Just as he was about to use the bayonet in his hand, Ren Xiaosu sprang up and grabbed him by his neck in an instant, quick as lightning. The assailant wanted to stab Ren Xiaosu with the bayonet in his hand, but he realized that Ren Xiaosu had already grabbed his arm. He could not move a muscle. Ren Xiaosu lifted the adult man weighing 85 kilograms up by his neck with one hand. Then the assailant felt a great pain radiate from his back. In the blink of an eye, Ren Xiaosu had slammed him up against the stone wall with one hand. The bayonet fell to the ground as the assailant could no longer grip it. While these people who had just been awoken were still clueless about what was going on, Su Xianchu's grey shadow clone appeared and stayed put by his side. The temperature at Yang Ziajin's gun barrel rapidly cooled as her opponent's body quickly turned cold. This was actually the first time Yang Ziajin had fired her gun during the expedition. It seemed no one had expected that she would be so firm and decisive in her actions. Moreover, she looked exceedingly calm while killing someone. It looked as normal as drinking a glass of water. But actually, what left the deepest impression on the others was not Yang Ziajin's actions, but Ren Xiaosu's. It only took a moment for the gun to go off and the bullet to enter the soldier's body. The huge kinetic energy of the rotating bullet then tore through the muscles and organs inside of him and only came to a stop after the kinetic energy was fully expended. But neither anyone on the outside nor the victim himself could see the internal effects. But it was different for Ren Xiaosu's side. The sight of an adult man being forcefully lifted up with one hand was too violent. Ren Xiaosu was only 1.78 meters tall, and his body was still not fully developed at the age of 17. So whether it was Su Xianchu, Lu Buletin, or Yang Xiaojun, they had never thought about Ren Xiaosu's combat prowess before. They thought, how much strength could a malnourished young refugee from town have? At most, he would have some survival skills that he honed from living in the wilderness. Ren Xiaosu had never revealed his true power, and Yang Xiaojun had not fired her gun before this, so it led everyone to have only a very vague idea of their combat strength. This was why the assailants dared to attack them. However, no one could have expected that this vague idea they had turned out to be extremely wrong. Ren Xiaosu's fingers were locked around the assailant's neck like a pair of pincers. The assailant could immediately feel the blood flow to his brain stopping. In fact, he could have kicked at Ren Xiaosu's vital regions with his legs, but his mind had already turned blank while his hands and feet convulsed in spasms. Yang Xiaojun did not look at the soldier who had fallen in front of her but looked quietly at Ren Xiaosu instead. She was already holding up two guns and pointing them at everyone else in the hollow. However, she was also a little puzzled. Earlier, Ren Xiaosu was clearly asleep. He could have faked his snoring, but it was impossible to disguise the movement of his eyelids. She had even been trained to judge whether someone was sleeping for real. A person could pretend to be asleep, but the mind would subconsciously cause the eyelids to move. A person who was not fast asleep would find it impossible to control their eyelid movements for an extended duration. So she knew that Ren Xiaosu had really fallen asleep just now. But the moment the assailants got up, Ren Xiaosu's snoring stopped, which proved that he was awake at that point. How could a person in deep sleep constantly remain alert like he had? A refugee like Ren Xiaosu couldn't possibly have received the same kind of training she had. Back in town, Yan Liuyuan was actually the happiest when he could keep watch during the night for Ren Xiaosu. It made him feel like Ren Xiaosu needed him the most at such a time and he was able to do something for him. Although he couldn't go hunting with Ren Xiaosu as a result of having to keep watch at night, he still felt that being a night watchman was extremely meaningful. But what Yan Liuyuan didn't know was that Ren Xiaosu actually didn't need anyone to keep watch at night for him ever since the palace came into existence. And at this moment, the Ren Xiaosu in Yang Xiaojun's eyes was displaying a supernatural strength. How could a thin young man like him possess a strength like that? Even Yang Xiaojun couldn't have expected this. The soldier, who was soaking in a pool of his own blood on the ground, struggled to spit out, "Sun Junzhen, get them." But the soldier named Sun Junzhen was currently curled up inside the hollow. He was so afraid that he didn't dare say a thing. Su Xianchu frowned and asked, "What's going on here?" Ren Xiaosu ignored him and continued to glare at the assailant. He had found those pine cones and pine needles for these people and even let them have the water source in the hollow. Although his motivation was to get their gratitude tokens, the overall outcome was still a good one. Ren Xiaosu had realized long ago that these people were plotting something. He initially thought that these people would have a bottom line or at least show a little restraint. He didn't even try to ask the assailants what they were after. Water? Guns? Luo Xinyu? Ren Xiaosu thought that there wasn't a need to ask them like he was being betrayed and feeling anguished since he did not need an answer from them. Without any trust in the first place, there was naturally no sense of betrayal. In Ren Xiaosu's eyes, there was no difference between these teammates and the wild beasts. Ren Xiaosu did not immediately snap the assailant's neck only because he wanted to see how Su Xianchu would react. But at this moment, the voice from his palace said, "Quest, give the enemy a swift death." Ren Xiaosu was really stunned this time. Wasn't this a palace that advocated doing good? Why did it suddenly become so straightforward and decisive then? In the past, Ren Xiaosu would always try to take the easy way out to complete his quests by taking advantage of any loopholes. But this time, it was so direct that he couldn't get used to it. Or perhaps to the palace, not torturing the enemy was considered a good deed? Damn, aren't you bending your principles a little too quickly? But Ren Xiaosu knew that the palace did not have a mind of its own. It must have its own judgment mechanisms for it to assign a quest like this. With a muffled crack, Ren Xiaosu snapped the assailant's neck. When Sun Junzhen, who was in the hollow, heard the sound, he trembled. It's got nothing to do with me. I didn't even tell them that you had great strength. Bang! Yang Xiaojun shot Sun Junzhen right between his eyes before he could finish speaking. Ren Xiaosu turned his head to Yang Xiaojun. Yang Xiaojun calmly said, hiding a crime is the same as committing one. Ren Xiaosu sucked in a breath. Yang Xiaojun was implying that even though Sun Junzhen did not tell Ren Xiaosu's strength to the assailants, he did not give any prior warning about their intention to attack them either. Therefore, to rid themselves of any further threats, Sun Junzhen had to die as well. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu felt that even though he had repeatedly updated his understanding of Yang Xiaojun, her ruthlessness and decisiveness still exceeded his expectations. But he did not feel that she was wrong. A team that originally consisted of 11 people was now left with 6 people in the matter of a night. Only Su Xianchu, Ren Xiaosu, Luo Xinyu, Lu Buletin, Wang Lei and Yang Xiaojun were left. Quest complete. Awarded Master Skill Duplication Scroll. Without pausing to think, Ren Xiaosu used the Master Skill Duplication Scroll on Su Xianchu. Using Yang Xiaojun's firearms skill as a comparison, there wasn't much significance in upgrading his advanced firearms proficiency to the master level. So at this moment, he needed Su Xianchu's power more. About to copy the target's master level skill or superpower. If you do not have the corresponding advanced level skill after copying a master level skill, you will not be able to learn it. The target does not have a master level skill. Randomly copied target's superpower, Shadow Clone. Do you want to learn it? Ren Xiaosu was overjoyed. So if the target had no master level skills, he could directly copy their superpowers? He had thought the chances would be very slim. Yes. You have learned Shadow Clone. Ren Xiaosu could feel the new power in him that he had just copied and learned. He was surprised to discover a shadow clone of himself standing quietly within the palace. But what left Ren Xiaosu a little surprised was that, while Su Xianchu's shadow clone was grey in color, his was black. What's with this? Is it darker because I don't wash my face? The 4 of Su Xianchu, Luo Xinyu, Lu Buletin and Wang Lei roughly knew that the soldiers had planned on attacking Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun. However, that was handled by the 2 of them in an instant. The duration of this fight was so quick that it was unimaginable, and the conflict also made Su Xianchu seriously reassess these 2 people standing in front of him. He sighed and said, they probably got what they deserved. Ren Xiaosu did not say anything. After thinking about it, he understood that Su Xianchu had no motive to cause this assault. If it were for the guns, Su Xianchu still had his rifle and pistol on him. If it were to possess Luo Xinyu, Su Xianchu got the opportunity long ago. After all, Luo Xinyu had even thrown herself at him, yet he never reacted positively to her advances. If it were for the water, Su Xianchu had already collected a bottle in the evening. He didn't have any reason to set his sights on Ren Xiaosu's 2 bottles of water. Ren Xiaosu was worried that Su Xianchu would take action to maintain order in the team, but as it turned out, he did not want to get involved in this conflict at all. Su Xianchu's overarching objective was to explore the mystery of the Jing Mountains and the evolution of the creatures that lived there. He was not concerned about getting the others out of this place alive. But surely Sun Junzhen's crime should not amount to his death, right? Su Xianchu sighed again. Forget it, no one can truly be faulted out in this wilderness. Ren Xiaosu felt that Su Xianchu already understood the principles of wilderness survival. There was no right or wrong. Survival was the only gospel truth. He also did not want to say that Yang Xiaojun was right to do so, but there was absolutely nothing wrong with ridding themselves of any threats. Ren Xiaosu carried the 3 corpses and threw them outside the hollow. Then he said to Su Xianchu and Yang Xiaojun, I could never figure out how Su Xia's corpse disappeared, so why don't we closely observe what happens this time? He told Yang Xiaojun, shout me awake if anything strange happens. He then sat down against the stone wall and went back to sleep. The others looked at Ren Xiaosu and wondered how he could remain so calm. Why could he go straight back to sleep like nothing had happened when he obviously just killed someone? Were you not the one who killed that person just now? In reality, Ren Xiaosu was not asleep. He was just taking a mental look at the palace because a black shadow clone had appeared in it. This made Ren Xiaosu lose his sleepiness as his interest was piqued. Crucially, he had been very envious of Su Xianchu and was even a little envious of Zhang Baozhen's power of blowing the explosive saliva bubbles. Although the saliva bubbles looked very weak, Ren Xiaosu suspected there was still room for improvement in its power. Did the supernatural beings have any room for improvement? He felt that there certainly must be. As for him, even though he had a palace that looked quite intimidating, the problem was that he had mostly been raising his strength and dexterity attributes thus far. It made him feel like he was not really a supernatural being. After all, some people could also reach his current state of strength after a long period of training. As such, before he learned the shadow clone power he copied from Su Xianchu, he could not be truly regarded as a supernatural being. At the very least, he could not be considered as one in terms of combat strength. Ren Xiaosu had long coveted Su Xianchu's shadow cone that was capable of blocking bullets. In Ren Xiaosu's opinion, weapons such as firearms and explosives were terrifying. The initial velocity at which a bullet was fired at could reach Mach speed or several times Mach. Normal people would have no chance of fighting back against weapons like firearms. Therefore, to Ren Xiaosu, the qualifier that separated a normal person from a supernatural being would be the fear of firearms and explosives. Of course, Ren Xiaosu was also not fearless of firearms and explosives. He would still die if someone carried out a sneak attack on him with those weapons. At this moment, the black shadow clone stood quietly and motionlessly beside the brass typewriter in the palace. Ren Xiaosu scrutinized it and saw that the silhouette of the shadow clone was clearly his own. It looked just like a blurred version of him. Why was Su Xianchu's shadow clone grey in color while his was black? He had clearly copied the power straight from him, so could there be other differences? Ren Xiaosu started to nimbly manipulate the shadow clone by moving it around within the palace. Then he realized that the strength of the shadow clone seemed to be closely related to that of his own strength. Even without any testing, Ren Xiaosu knew that this was a kind of connection on the mental level. It seemed like the shadow clone was formed straight from his mental willpower. The strength, speed, and even density of this shadow clone were twice of what Ren Xiaosu had. It was no wonder it could even block bullets. A normal person could also block bullets, but they would die, while the shadow clone wouldn't. Through Ren Xiaosu's personal experimentation, he found the usage of the shadow clone was determined by the willpower he had. As long as he was full of vigor, he could continue using it. But Ren Xiaosu was a little curious about how something as vague as willpower could be calculated. He tried asking the palace, "What's the level of my willpower?" The voice from the palace answered, "Unauthorized to answer." Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. Since his master-level wilderness survival proficiency could be determined, and his strength and dexterity attributes could also be determined, then why couldn't the palace determine the level of his willpower? Was there no criterion for determining one's willpower, or was there some other reason for it? Since he could not get an answer for the time being, Ren Xiaosu did not dwell any further on it and went to sleep. But Ren Xiaosu had sort of figured out why Su Xianchu's shadow clone was grey while his was black. His own body was stronger than Su Xianchu's, so his shadow clone was denser. When the sunshine shone on Ren Xiaosu's face in the morning, the first thing he did when he woke up was to look at the spot where he dumped the corpses. It surprised him that nothing had occurred with the 3 corpses. It was no wonder Yang Ziajin did not wake him up in the middle of the night to say something. So it turned out that nothing unusual had happened. It was good that nothing had happened. He couldn't constantly hope that something dangerous would happen to them, right? Then he turned his gaze back into the hollow and happened to meet Lu Buletin's eyes. However, Lu Buletin did not wear the arrogance he had from long ago when he first came out of the stronghold. He was starting to avoid looking at Ren Xiaosu. Lu Buletin did not rest well last night. He was someone who only knew how to bully the weak and fear the strong. When he learned that Ren Xiaosu was actually powerful, he started to panic a little. He could not help but feel anxious. He, Luo Xinyu, and Wang Lei were all shocked to discover that even with so few people left on the team, everyone else were monsters, unlike the 3 of them. Su Xianchu was already standing outside the hollow. He was thinking about something as he looked at the forest before him. When Ren Xiaosu walked beside Wang Lei, who was lying on the stretcher, Wang Lei flinched away from him. But how could he be faster than Ren Xiaosu? Ren Xiaosu lifted up his shirt and took a look at Wang Lei's stab wound created by Su Xianchu. He said, "All right, you can get up now and walk on your own. The wound's already healed." All of a sudden, Wang Lei realized that his wound did not hurt anymore. Could Ren Xiaosu's black medicine really be that effective? "I'll pay you for it," Su Xianchu said. "In that case, I still have a little," Ren Xiaosu replied. If it were for something else, he would probably not be willing to exchange it for money. After all, there was no use for money in the wilderness. However, the black medicine was different. But Ren Xiaosu suddenly thought of a problem. "Haven't you run out of money?" Su Xianchu said, "There was money on those 3 that you 2 killed, so I took it from them." Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt such a heart-wrenching pain that he couldn't breathe. He was too inexperienced. How could he not have searched the bodies? How could he have made such an amateur mistake? So it turned out that Su Xianchu had gone outside to search the corpses just now. This guy was too good at waiting. He was afraid it would be dangerous during the night, so he waited until dawn before going outside. Ren Xiaosu said resentfully, "That isn't your money. It's clearly my money. You have to at least share half of it with me." Su Xianchu gave it some thought and said, "Money is of no use for me here. As long as you give me the black medicine, I'll give all of the 8,000 plus yuan on me to you." When Ren Xiaosu heard that those 3 had more than 8,000 yuan with them, the pain in his heart grew even greater. However, Ren Xiaosu carefully sized up Su Xianchu. This guy really isn't greedy for money. He took out the bottle of black medicine, which was now half used after it had been applied on Wang Lei, and handed it to Su Xianchu. "Money, please." "Here." Su Xianchu took all the money out and handed it to Ren Xiaosu. He even purposely turned his pants pockets inside out to prove that he had no money left on him. Ren Xiaosu nodded in satisfaction. Although he did not know Su Xianchu well, it felt like he was rather sincere through his actions on the journey thus far. And when Ren Xiaosu took the money from Su Xianchu, the voice from his palace said, "It has been detected that the host is carrying 20,000 yuan in cash. Basic storage rights have been unlocked for purchase." When Ren Xiaosu treated Wang Lei's wound, Wang Lei paid him 1,200 yuan. Then Luo Xinyu handed 10,000 yuan to him for his help. And now, he received a further 8,900 yuan from Su Xianchu. Added together, Ren Xiaosu's cash on hand reached 20,100 yuan. But Ren Xiaosu was astounded this time. Before this, he had been very anxious to unlock the palace's storage function, but the palace never once told him how to gain access to it. He had guessed that he might have to complete a certain quest or side quest that was similar to unlocking the weapon. But never could he have imagined he would have to spend his own money to unlock the storage. As a virtual palace, why would you need money? Ren Xiaosu had never saved more than 10,000 yuan in his entire life before. But now that he had received close to 10,000 yuan from Su Xianchu, he was going to have to spend it all again. This really felt like going back to square one. He had no choice but to spend the money. Ren Xiaosu knew very well how important it was to have a storage space in the wilderness. He clenched his teeth and said to his mind palace, "Purchase it. Purchase successful. You've unlocked basic storage rights." At this moment, another door appeared in the palace and slowly opened. Then Ren Xiaosu saw a space measuring 1 cubic meter embedded in the middle of a wall behind it. What a scam! 20,000 yuan bought me such a small space. What did the palace say just now? Oh right, the basic storage rights have been unlocked. That meant he could still buy the intermediate, advanced, and so on and so forth grades of storage in the future? The space behind this door would probably get larger after more purchases and maybe even turn into an actual house? But how much money would he have to spend for that? Ren Xiaosu did not even know if he could make that much money in this lifetime. Ren Xiaosu had thought it impressive to earn 20,000 yuan. Ren Xiaosu felt it was bittersweet. Honestly, his harvest today was far greater than the previous days of the expedition combined. He went outside and broke a tree branch off, then peeled off the bark and used the white stem inside to scrape his teeth clean. Although he could do without washing his face, he needed to keep his teeth feeling clean and fresh. To be able to live freely in this wilderness, you had to have good oral hygiene. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu discovered that Yang Xiaojun and Su Xianchu were also brushing their teeth with the snapped-off branches like he did. These two people had a very positive attitude regarding survival. They were learning from nearly everything Ren Xiaosu did. Ren Xiaosu suddenly grabbed a handful of leaves and stuffed them into his pocket. As a result, Su Xianchu and Yang Xiaojun also plucked a handful of leaves from the same type of tree and stuffed them into their pockets. As the saying goes, there will always be someone to learn from in a group of people. When Su Xianchu and the others realized that Ren Xiaosu had far more experience in wilderness survival than them, their first thoughts were to learn from him. Only by learning from Ren Xiaosu could they survive a little more comfortably in this wilderness. But Su Xianchu was a little curious. What use do these leaves have? Ren Xiaosu chuckled as he took the leaves out and threw them away. They have no use. I only wanted to see if the two of you would copy what I did. Su Xianchu was surprised. He looked at Ren Xiaosu for a long time without saying anything. He stubbornly kept the leaves in his pocket and did not throw them away. He plucked the leaves because he wanted to pluck them and definitely not because he was copying Ren Xiaosu's actions. But Yang Xiaojun was different. She acted like no one was around and grabbed another handful of leaves and stuffed them into her pocket. The mental fortitude of Su Xianchu, Yang Xiaojun, and Ren Xiaosu was obviously better than Luo Xinyu's and the others. After witnessing so many deaths last night, the three of them could still face their circumstances with calm. It was as though they did not take these matters to heart. But Luo Xinyu and the others could not do it. When Ren Xiaosu, Yang Xiaojun, and Su Xianchu went out of the hollow to brush their teeth, Luo Xinyu and the others did not dare go out because they were scared of the three corpses lying outside. Luo Xinyu, Lu Buletin, and Wang Lei had to calm themselves for half an hour before they finally dared to come out of the cave. They just couldn't understand why the others could still laugh after all that had happened. Let's get ready to set off. Su Xianchu said, although we don't know what dangers we might encounter later on, we can't stay here. Before it gets dark again, we have to find a suitable place to set up camp for the night. I hope that no one is thinking of going around on their own anymore. After all, you've all seen what happened to those who went by themselves. They were now on the periphery of the Jing Mountains, and Ren Xiaosu could even see the black smoke spewing from the active volcanoes in the range. The further they went in, the more dangerous it would get. Can you all say what exactly exists in the Jing Mountains? Ren Xiaosu wondered. Su Xianchu thought for a moment and said, it could be the mystery of the wild animal's evolution that's hidden within, or perhaps the origination of a new taxonomic order. When you came out of the stronghold, did they tell you what the site that possibly existed there might be? Ren Xiaosu asked. Su Xianchu stopped hiding the information. A mysterious city. In the past, Mr. Zhang had told of an ancient city in the wilderness during one of his story sessions. The ancient city had been prosperous for some time but suddenly started declining for some reason. Zhang Jinglan said that it seemed like demons started appearing after the decline of the ancient city. At the time, Ren Xiaosu was tempted to say, like hell I'd believe that. If he didn't want to teach the lesson, so be it. Why did he have to make up topics like demons and the such? How could there really be demons in this world? But Ren Xiaosu was a little convinced now. In fact, Zhang Jinglan should not be too old and was probably only in his 30s. Ren Xiaosu had heard from Wang Fugui before that Zhang Jinglan came from a different place a long time ago. As for how long ago that was, no one could remember. Ren Xiaosu would sometimes question whether Zhang Jinglan was a resident of the stronghold before he became a refugee. How else could he know so many things? Even though some of the things that he said could have been made up. Now, when Su Xianchu said that there was a mysterious city hidden within the Jing Mountains, Ren Xiaosu remembered what Zhang Jinglan had said. Then did that mean there were demons in the Jing Mountains? Ren Xiaosu asked Su Xianchu, did they talk about any other things? Su Xianchu thought it over carefully and said, I think Wang Kongyang also found out from his sources right before we set off that this information about the Jing Mountains was not only exclusive to Stronghold 113. It seems that other teams are also on their way there. Ren Xiaosu thought that Su Xianchu was going to reveal some secrets, but it turned out to only be this. Actually, be it the Stronghold overseers or the corporations, they're all very interested in the evolution of these supernatural beings. Su Xianchu said, you all should also know about the newly built psychiatric hospital in the Stronghold, right? The supernatural beings are being studied not only because the overseers want to learn how to defend against them, but also because they intend to make use of them. Can you talk more about these supernatural beings? Ren Xiaosu said, as a supernatural being, you should be very concerned about this issue, right? Supernatural beings. Su Xianchu pondered it before saying, actually, supernatural beings existed since a long time ago. It was just that everyone regarded them as legends in the past. There's increased attention on them again these days because the supernatural beings have started appearing more frequently. There's even an extremely secretive organization of supernatural beings that has appeared in some places. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. They even have an organization now. The existence of such an organization would mean that the number of supernatural beings was not small. You guys might have already heard about the event where a supernatural being tried to assassinate a stronghold overseer some time back, right? Su Xianchu said, Wang Kongyang told me that the supernatural being was from an organization called the Saboteurs, or at least that's what that supernatural being claimed. Did he get caught? Ren Xiaosu was curious. No, Su Xianchu shook his head. He's far more powerful than you can imagine. Nowadays, every major stronghold is targeting the supernatural beings. It seems that they're still assessing the danger ratings of these people, but I'm not sure how they're being evaluated. Ren Xiaosu muttered, why do they have to fight to the death? Can't they just get along with one another? He said so because he could sympathize with the situation. As Ren Xiaosu was also a supernatural being, and having to suddenly face those large organizations, he felt a little uncomfortable. Yang Xiaojun glanced at him but did not say anything. Su Xianchu sighed and said, I can't return to the stronghold anymore. If the people in the stronghold learn that I'm a supernatural being, it'll end tragically for me. Beside him, Lu Buletin piped up, don't worry, we won't reveal your secret. Honestly speaking, Lu Buletin was a little worried that he would get silenced by Su Xianchu. As such, he hurriedly expressed his stance on the matter. Su Xianchu glanced at Lu Buletin without saying a word. It could be seen that he still held to his principles and would not do something like silencing someone. But who would believe Lu Buletin's assurance? It would be beyond idiotic to trust him. Su Xianchu gave Lu Buletin the rare rebuttal. Of everyone here, you're the one who worries me the most. Ren Xiaosu asked, then you can go back if Lu Buletin dies in an accident, right? Lu Buletin was stunned. How could he curse him like that? Lu Buletin wanted to scold Ren Xiaosu but did not have the guts to do so. Su Xianchu, who was standing off to the side, said with a sigh, you're also a supernatural being, right? Ren Xiaosu said, Hui. Ren Xiaosu wondered whether he had given himself away somehow and that had Yang Xiaojin noticed that something was up. Then Su Xianchu said, you must have awakened your powers to annoy people. Ren Xiaosu was speechless. But, Ren Xiaosu got a sudden inspiration. He said to the palace in his mind, Palace, do I have a skill to annoy people? What's my level of proficiency? The voice from the palace calmly answered, perfect. Ren Xiaosu was speechless. It was actually perfect. Ren Xiaosu had gasped in admiration at Yang Xiaojin when he found out that she had a perfect skill. But he did not expect himself to have one as well. But comparing his perfect skill with hers, what he had was bullshit. Palace, are you serious? When Ren Xiaosu thought of himself also having a perfect skill, his balls ached. But it was nonetheless a perfect skill, so he was still kind of happy. Some people talked about how it wasn't easy to perfect a skill in life, but who could have expected that he would accomplish it so early in life? Su Xianchu cast a glance at the three corpses outside the hollow and finally said, let's go. Whatever it is that lies in the Jing Mountains, I'll go and have a look at it myself. This was what supernatural beings desired. Everyone used to think that what was said in the legends were unrealistic, but once they started closing in on the legends themselves, they would develop a desire for the world at large. It was the same for Su Xianchu and Ren Xiaosu too. Su Xianchu said, I don't know if you guys have ever read a book called Journey to the West. I've seen it in a library at the stronghold. When I read in the book that someone could lift a cudgel weighing 13,500 catties, I found it unbelievable. But these days, I kinda wonder if the characters in the book could possibly exist in this world. The book said the cudgel was so powerful it could crush mountains. Ren Xiaosu pondered it and said, I've never come across the book you just mentioned as the school in town doesn't carry it. But I have an issue with it if you say that a cudgel weighing 13,500 catties can crush mountains. That works out to only be around 6 tons. The tractors at the factory outside town can already bear a load of 10 tons. Even if they went over the limit by a little and carried 2 of those cudgels, it wouldn't be an issue at all. Su Xianchu took a deep breath before he turned around and walked towards the forest. He was about to head into the unknown Jing Mountains. The heavy rain had washed away both of their footprints, which made it very difficult for Ren Xiaosu to locate their tracks. Without any footprints, he could only examine the leaves and branches in the surroundings. As the forest was extremely dense, thick bushes could be found everywhere under the huge canopies. If the two of them had passed through the forest, they would definitely break some branches along the way. This was something that would not get washed away by the rain. Ren Xiaosu followed the path of some slightly broken branches, but the trail only lasted a few dozen meters before vanishing. When Su Xianchu realized that Ren Xiaosu was looking for something, he asked, "Found anything yet?" No. Ren Xiaosu shook his head. They didn't go any further than this. Their tracks abruptly stopped over here. The two of them must have been terrified, so they shouldn't have ventured too far away from the hollow. However, something here did not make any sense. The two of them were just barely more than 10 meters out from the hollow at the time. If an accident had happened here, those of us in the hollow should have heard it. Even if the sound of the rain was muffling it at the time. So the most probable reason was that, when they came here to relieve themselves, they encountered something that caught them so off guard that they didn't even have the chance to make a sound. When Ren Xiaosu looked at the trees in the surrounding area, he found that not a single tree had bark torn off the tree trunks. There were no traces of fighting or struggle, nothing at all. What was truly scary here was the fear of the unknown. Let's go. Su Xianchu said, in such circumstances, we need to find an even safer place to set up camp. We have to do that even if we have to end the day's journey earlier than scheduled. Ren Xiaosu agreed with Su Xianchu's point of view. It's best if we can find a cave similar to the hollow from last night. Although we don't know what happened, we were safe in the hollow. So I think it's better to find a similar cave to set up camp tonight. The sky had not cleared up yet after the rain, so it could still rain again afterwards. As the saying went, a cold spell comes after the autumn rain. The rain had also staved off the sweltering heat caused by the volcanic activity. The group of people walked through the forest with extreme difficulty. Ren Xiaosu suggested to Su Xianchu to try his best to take a path where there were no puddles. In the current era where ants could grow to as large as a human finger pad, and face bugs were even a freaking thing, encountering something like leeches now might just get someone killed. The clothes they were wearing could not protect them from a leech's bite. I wonder how the bugs grew to such a large size. Ren Xiaosu wondered, just what are those face bugs, really? Su Xianchu thought for a moment and said, whatever they are, those face bugs shouldn't be able to surpass the limitations of being an insect, right? Their body structure ensures that they can't grow to a large size like mammals since the supply of oxygen just wouldn't allow for something like that to happen. That's why I suspect the proportion of oxygen in the air here is very high, which has allowed them to grow to the size they are. Have you guys noticed it yet? Even though we're fatigued physically, our minds are in fine shape, and we can still think clearly. This definitely has something to do with the increased amount of oxygen we're breathing. As Ren Xiaosu listened to Su Xianchu's analysis, he found that it sounded quite reasonable. It was not only due to the life forms here evolving, there was also some scientific reasoning involved. Wait a minute. Ren Xiaosu was surprised. Is it because the plant life here is also mutating and evolving that it increased the oxygen levels? The vegetation near the stronghold has also started thriving a little. In that case, will there also be incidents of insect infestations in the future? That's very possible, Su Xianchu said. Everyone's difference in stamina became obvious as they continued to advance. It was a cakewalk for Ren Xiaosu. With his current stamina, he could easily trek through the forest without losing strength and not feel tired at all. Although Su Xianchu was a supernatural being, his physical fitness did not seem to have improved much. Su Xianchu himself also admitted that his physical fitness had only started to enhance after becoming a supernatural being. But it seemed like this was a slow process. As such, Su Xianchu's physical fitness was not so good that it could be on par with Ren Xiaosu's. Su Xianchu said, ever since my power awakened and I became a supernatural being, I realized that every time I push my body to its limits in training, my physical fitness gets raised further. Ren Xiaosu wondered if that was really true. Could he also try that out in the future? But he would have to wait until he got back to the town for that. Pushing himself to his limits out here would probably spell an earlier end for him. Meanwhile, Lu Buletin, Luo Xinyu, and Wang Lei were all in miserable states as their clothes were getting a little ragged. When they came out of the stronghold, they were all prim and proper. But now, their faces had become almost as dirty as Ren Xiaosu's. But they did not dare to fall behind since they were afraid that Ren Xiaosu, Su Xianchu and Yang Xiajin would not wait for them. If that happened, there would only be death waiting for them. The person that surprised Ren Xiaosu the most was Yang Xiajin. He realized that she also looked a little tired now, but her endurance was still much better than Su Xianchu's. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu saw a shadow clone emerge from Su Xianchu's body. Ren Xiaosu thought that Su Xianchu was reacting to some kind of danger, so he immediately went alert. However, he saw Su Xianchu climb onto the back of his shadow clone like no one was watching. He intended to take a piggyback ride on it. Ren Xiaosu was dumbfounded. Hey, that's fucking cheating. Ever since Su Xianchu exposed himself as a supernatural being, he was getting more and more fond of using his power openly. As he was used to keeping it hidden, there were even times when he could not remember that he could use its power. The physical fitness of this shadow clone was twice of Su Xianchu's own physical fitness. It could walk in the forest like it was walking on flat ground. If not for Ren Xiaosu's reluctance to expose the fact he had copied Su Xianchu's shadow clone, he would have used it to carry him as well. Lu Buletin, Luo Xinyu, and Wang Lei were almost driven to despair. It was really frustrating to be drawn into comparisons with other people. Why couldn't they also have their own powers awakened so that they could become supernatural beings as well? Suddenly, Su Xianchu's shadow clone stopped in front of them. This time, Ren Xiaosu got really nervous because he noticed Su Xianchu's muscles tensing up just like a puffed-up cat would. They saw Su Xianchu slowly get off from the back of the shadow clone to prevent himself from slowing it down. Then he whispered, "Everyone, look ahead." Ren Xiaosu looked into the obscure and gloomy forest in front of him. Through the dense foliage of the forest, it seemed like there was something white lingering in front of them. What is that?" Lu Buletin asked, trembling. While he asked that question, he subconsciously moved behind Luo Xinyu and Wang Lei, hiding all the way at the back of the team. Su Xianchu scrutinized it. He hesitated for a while before saying, "Look, doesn't that white figure look like a woman in white scratching a tree?" As the sight was so eerie, Ren Xiaosu's hair stood on end. Why was there a woman scratching a tree with her back facing them in a place like this? Nobody could understand it. But the more they couldn't explain it, the greater their fears. Next to him, Ren Xiaosu found that Yang Xiaojin looked very nervous for the first time. He could see her pursing her lips while her knuckles turned white from gripping the gun so tightly. Su Xianchu's shadow clone was standing right in front of him. It seemed that it was guarding against the woman in white in case she suddenly pounced at him. But in reality, that woman was still dozens of meters away from them. "Should we take a detour?" Ren Xiaosu whispered, "She might not follow us." Just as he finished speaking, a strong wind gusted through the forest, and the woman in white seemed to float up. Su Xianchu clenched his teeth and said, "We can't avoid it. If something like a ghost can stop us here in our tracks, how do you expect to get to the Jing Mountains?" Su Xianchu then commanded his shadow clone to move towards the woman in white as he followed closely. Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojin gave each other a look. They did not expect Su Xianchu to be so brave in this situation. Some people tended to make outrageous claims in normal times but would get timid, nervous, or scared in the face of something serious. Others were different. The more dangerous a situation, the calmer they would be. There was a kind of ferocity embedded in their bones. "Let's catch up," Ren Xiaosu said. A second later, Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojin tacitly followed Su Xianchu. As they were all in the same boat now, they couldn't let Su Xianchu take on the risks by himself. Lu Buletin was trembling as he said, "What should we do? Should we follow them? But what if something else like that also appears beside us?" Luo Xinyu said in fear. After that, she caught up to them with Wang Lei following close behind. Seeing that he was all alone, Lu Buletin got even more frightened. He whispered, "Wait for me." Ren Xiaosu said to Su Xianchu from behind, "Once you find that you're no match for her, restrict her movements with your shadow clone and buy us some time so that we can concentrate our firepower on her." Su Xianchu, Ren Xiaosu, and Yang Xiaojin were all carrying guns. On the surface, this was the strongest direct form of attack they had. If this woman in white turned out to be unafraid of bullets, there was nothing more they could do. Su Xianchu answered softly, "Okay, watch my back, and pay close attention to the surroundings." Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. Perhaps the people in the stronghold had not experienced life like those who lived in town, so they were more trusting of others than the refugees. Living in town, there was even a need for someone to keep watch at night while they slept. People who grew up in such an environment would never ask someone they barely knew to watch their backs. Was that the difference between the town and the stronghold? The three of them cautiously approached the woman in white. However, a strange feeling grew inside them the closer they approached. Ren Xiaosu was initially crouching because this posture was the easiest for him to make a move. In the end, he slowly straightened up as he stood and said, "What the hell is this?" Su Xianchu was also confused. He commanded his shadow clone as it swayed towards the woman in white and plucked her down from the tree. It was a tattered, plastic, female doll, the type that looked inflatable. Ren Xiaosu walked beside Su Xianchu and looked at it for some time. "What is this thing?" "I don't know," Su Xianchu said, shaking his head. As they had never seen this thing before, they all expressed their lack of knowledge. "But it looks to be in terrible condition." Ren Xiaosu asked, "Is this not something from the stronghold?" "I've never seen it before in the stronghold," Su Xianchu denied again. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry as they wondered what this doll was. They were just frightened by something as crappy as it. It wasn't until they got close to it that they realized something was off. "Wait a minute, there's something else under the tree." Ren Xiaosu happened to spot a metallic box that was caught within the knotted tree roots. Ren Xiaosu took his dagger and poked the rusty box. As a result, the metallic box, which was already badly corroded, crumbled the moment the dagger touched it slightly. The metallic box contained several light red pieces of paper. When the metallic box crumbled, the pieces of paper also turned into powder along with it. In the blink of an eye, only one item was left from inside the metallic box. It was a piece of green plastic. Rather, it was a piece of green paper wrapped between two plastic sheets. The green paper had mysterious twisting and turning patterns, not unlike tadpoles, printed on it. This, Su Xianchu was stunned as he looked at the plastic sheet in Ren Xiaosu's hand. Could this be something that was left behind by human civilization from before the cataclysm? And that plastic doll too? It takes several hundred years for plastics to fully decompose, even if they're buried underground. So while everything else has already decomposed, this thing was preserved. But what's this strange pattern on it? Is it hiding some kind of a secret? Yang Xiaojun frowned and wondered about it. "Don't you all think it looks like a map?" At this moment, Lu Buletin and the two who had rushed over said, "These symbols contained within the square grid are turning in all sorts of different directions. It looks just like a maze." Su Xianchu and Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. Could this be a map of that mysterious city in the Jing Mountains? Luo Xinyu said, "Look, there are some words on it." Due to the decomposition, the plastic sheet had discolored and yellowed. But after Luo Xinyu's observation, they took notice and saw a small line of words below the mysterious pattern. Ren Xiaosu carefully read aloud, "Please scan the QR code for payment." The group was confused. "What's a QR code? Who do we pay it to? What? We still have to pay to get through the maze." Because knowledge of civilization had become lost through the generations, nobody knew how some things worked during the pre-cataclysm times. Some of these practices had been abandoned by humans because they had no use for them, while others were forgotten during the dark age of survival. No one had seen these things in the stronghold or town before, so its function had become a mystery. In any case, it was not a map of a maze. Ren Xiaosu looked at Su Xianchu. "Are you sure there's a mysterious city in that place? Can the mystery of the evolution really be found there? If not, how do you explain the current changes occurring in the Jing Mountains?" Su Xianchu asked. "Indeed," Ren Xiaosu said, "the mountains are always full of secrets, but I keep getting the feeling that the city might not be that mysterious. Let's go, we'll only find out after we see it for ourselves." Su Xianchu carefully placed the QR code into his breast pocket as though he was afraid of damaging it. "Should we take this tattered doll with us?" Lu Buletin asked. "Just bring it along, I guess. Who knows if it'll be useful or not?" Su Xianchu said. In reality, Ren Xiaosu and company didn't think the doll would be of any use to them. Although no one knew what usage it served before the cataclysm, they were not dumb either. But since they didn't have to carry the doll themselves, it wouldn't trouble them to bring it along. As such, Lu Buletin felt miserable the entire way. Even though he was exhausted, he still had to carry that tattered doll around with care. The worst thing was that all of them had not eaten yet today. Su Xianchu suddenly stopped walking. Su Xianchu could barely take it for much longer, let alone Lu Buletin, Luo Xinyu, and Wang Lei. He turned around and said, "Everyone, let's find some pine trees to pluck pine cones from. We'll eat something first before we continue on our journey." Based on Su Xianchu and the others' wilderness survival lessons thus far, they had only learned the extent of plucking pine cones to fill their stomachs. In reality, these pine cones were incredibly difficult to peel and had very few nuts in them. The pine nuts they could retrieve from a large pine tree wouldn't even be enough to fill their stomachs, but what else could they have if they did not eat this? They could only look at Ren Xiaosu, who did not seem to care about them at all. They saw him take his dagger and cut into an unidentified tree next to him. Then a white, milky sap started flowing out of the incision he made. Su Xianchu's eyes lit up. "Can you drink that?" The others also looked over in surprise. However, Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, "The majority of the milky saps that can be found in the forest are undrinkable because there's a high chance of getting poisoned if you do." Su Xianchu wondered, "Then why did you make an incision to get the sap?" "I'm applying it onto my dagger," Ren Xiaosu said, as though it were a matter of course. The others immediately wondered what kind of person he was. He actually thought of applying poison onto his dagger? What a treacherous person! But they did not dare to despise Ren Xiaosu's treachery. After all, they had been depending on him too much for the entire journey. If any of them were to get injured, they could only rely on him to suture their wounds together and apply the black medicine for them. Lu Buletin, Luo Xinyu, and Wang Lei still had some money left on them in case of any emergencies that would require Ren Xiaosu to save them. They had already realized that having money might mean keeping their lives with Ren Xiaosu around. If they offended Ren Xiaosu at this time, he would probably still be willing to treat their wounds if they paid him money. But who knew if Ren Xiaosu might end up having an extra kidney in his hand after suturing up their wounds? If that happened, what could they do? While Lu Buletin was plucking pine cones, he accidentally fell out of the tree. But luckily for him, it did not hurt as the ground was covered with soft pine needles that cushioned his fall. He got so emotional that he nearly broke down. This is all the wolves' fault. Didn't they say in the stronghold that the wolves had run off to another mountain range? Why did they suddenly reappear here? If not for those wolves, we might have already gotten back to the stronghold. It's just as the proverb says, the wolf and the bay make mischief. Wolves were never good to start off with. However, Ren Xiaosu disagreed this time. "I've also heard that proverb before, but have you seen an actual bay before?" The others were stunned. "Isn't the bay an animal that clings onto a wolf's behind?" This proverb says that the wolves and bay work together to catch livestock by using their forelegs and hind legs respectively. It means that they collude one with each other to do bad things. Yes. Ren Xiaosu nodded and said, "That's what Mr. Zhang said in school, but my question remains, has anyone ever seen a bay before?" Lu Buletin was stunned. He muttered, "How could we see one if we live in the stronghold?" "I've seen one before." Ren Xiaosu said, "It was among the wolf pack that chased us into the canyon. When I encountered them last year, I saw a bay with them." "What does a bay look like?" someone asked with curiosity. "The bay is actually a wolf as well." Ren Xiaosu said calmly, "It's just that its forelegs could no longer move after it got caught in a hunter's trap. So the other wolves carried it around on their backs and helped it continue living." Su Xianchu and the others were startled. They had learned the proverb "the wolf and the bay make mischief" during their school days in the stronghold. The teacher told them then that the wolves and bay were both evil. They were even taught which insects were beneficial and which were pests. But Ren Xiaosu, who had ventured into the wilderness, did not think that way. He heard from Zhang Jinglan that the nomads of the grasslands used to worship wolves. Back then, he wasn't allowed to attend lessons in the school, so he asked Yan Liuyuan to help him ask a question. Aren't wolves harmful to livestock? Why did the nomads worship wolves? Mr. Zhang replied with a question. Are the wolves at fault? True, wolves eat sheep and sheep eat grass. Neither was in the wrong. This is the order of the food chain and this is what they were born to be. Although wolves were harmful to humans, they would never abandon their disabled counterparts. Would a human do that? Just how many people had died due to the disregard shown by their companions during this expedition to the Jing Mountains? It was not that they were in the wrong, but Ren Xiaosu sometimes envied the wolves. At least when something happened, they would not get left behind mercilessly. Ren Xiaosu didn't care what the rest of them thought. He started digging up the soil at the roots of the pine tree with his dagger and said, "Don't clear the piles of leaves with your bare hands in the wilderness because there might be scorpions, centipedes, or poisonous snakes hidden in them. If you disturb them, it'll lead to your death." When Ren Xiaosu did not find any scorpions or the like, he was a little disappointed. After all, roasted scorpions tasted rather good. Ren Xiaosu wondered if he should deliberately try to catch some scorpions and centipedes to eat for dinner. As he was thinking about it, he dug out some of the pine tree's roots. If y'all feel that the pine cones are not filling enough, you can cook the pine roots to eat for dinner. The others looked at Ren Xiaosu in surprise. It seemed like everything was edible in Ren Xiaosu's eyes. It still wasn't too bad when they were told to eat the pine nuts. But now, he was even telling them they could eat the pine roots? Is this even food? This is more like building materials, all right. But Ren Xiaosu did not mind. He had eaten so many things in the wilderness over the years that other people thought were inedible. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu thought of a question. Are there any similar places like the Jing Mountains near the other strongholds? I'm talking about those places that experienced a sudden mutation and evolution of their life forms. Su Xianchu was silent for a moment before saying, "Yes, but it's already under the control of the Pyro Company." The Pyro Company? Ren Xiaosu wondered, why haven't I heard of it before? Which of the organizations does it fall under? None, it's an independent corporation with more than 20 strongholds under its control. Su Xianchu said, but they're quite far away from our stronghold 113, so it's normal that you haven't heard of them before. What's the place controlled by the Pyro Company like? Ren Xiaosu asked. Su Xianchu looked embarrassed. That seemed to be the extent of his knowledge. Instead, it was Yang Xiaojun who spoke up. That place the Pyro Company controls are very mysterious. Someone mentioned that they'd seen huge prehistoric birds flying over the skies there, but the Pyro Company has such a powerful military that it managed to gain control of that place. Perhaps only the core personnel of the Pyro Company know what really happened there. Su Xianchu obviously did not know this information about the Pyro Company. That was to say, Yang Xiaojun had far surpassed Su Xianchu, who was a soldier of the private army, in terms of gathering intelligence. Moreover, Yang Xiaojun had mentioned, perhaps only the core personnel of the Pyro Company know what really happened there. Why was she so sure that only the core personnel knew about it rather than the entire Pyro Company? Yang Xiaojun must have sought out information from some of the Pyro Company's members before, but to no avail. Ren Xiaosu felt that Yang Xiaojun couldn't have managed that alone. It was just like how he didn't know how many strongholds had been built by humans until now, with the highest number that he had ever heard of being Stronghold 178. He did not know about the Pyro Company, nor how many organizations were out there. To be able to understand the overall situation of the world in this era where communications infrastructure was underdeveloped, she had to have an organization behind her. Therefore, Yang Xiaojun must belong to an organization. As for which organization she belonged to, nobody knew. Ren Xiaosu was someone who liked learning and contemplation a lot. At this moment, Yang Xiaojun stopped talking when she noticed that Ren Xiaosu was deep in thought. Yang Xiaojun was not stupid. She realized that Ren Xiaosu was analyzing the information she had just said. Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked, "Are these the only two known locations with mysterious activities happening?" Yang Xiaojun gave him a look. "There will be more and more of such places." In the afternoon, everyone was showing signs of fatigue except for Ren Xiaosu. As Lu Buletin, Luo Xinyu, and Wang Lei were only normal people, their soles had already started blistering. However, they did not dare to fall behind or ask if they could take a rest. Ren Xiaosu finished a bottle of water and then refilled it in a shallow stream. As the other three did not have any containers with them, they had to find some large leaves to hold the water. In front, Su Xianchu had a canteen while Yang Xiaojun had a bottle of water hidden on her too. As for Ren Xiaosu, needless to say, he not only had a water bottle, there was even the metal cup he'd brought from home. However, Luo Xinyu, Lu Buletin, and Wang Lei did not have any containers. As such, Ren Xiaosu, Yang Xiaojun, and Su Xianchu were strolling ahead of them with their hands swinging about. Meanwhile, Luo Xinyu, Lu Buletin, and Wang Lei each held a leaf in their hands as they followed them and looked pretty pathetic. When they were getting water, Ren Xiaosu expressly instructed, "Y'all can't go near the deep end. Just get water from the streams. Once you get it, leave ASAP." When Su Xianchu mentioned the prehistoric birds had appeared in the place controlled by the Pyro Company, he remembered the dark shadow in the river he encountered when he was catching fish. It was a creature that even other fishes in the water were afraid of. Ren Xiaosu even regretted that he didn't catch a glimpse of what it really was. At dusk, they finally found a new cave to settle in, but it was tiny this time. It was a little crowded with 6 people sitting inside, but they had no choice. The forest was too scary at night. When they huddled together to keep themselves warm over a fire, everyone felt a rare sense of security. Perhaps humans would only realize the importance of companionship during moments like this. Ren Xiaosu carefully checked the inside of the cave to look for any traces left behind by humans, such as inscriptions like the ones left in the hollow last night. Unfortunately, he could not find any traces of that here. Su Xianchu instructed, "If anyone wants to relieve themselves, it will be best not to head into the forest in case of accidents. If the ladies want to relieve themselves, we'll just turn our heads the other way. The two of you can take turns to watch over us to make sure we're not peeking. This is also for the sake of everyone's safety." As the group chewed on the cooked pine roots, Lu Buletin remembered the aroma of the roasted boar from before and joked to Ren Xiaosu, "Why don't you make another wish? Wouldn't it be great if another animal ran into a tree?" Ren Xiaosu snapped at him, "Why don't you wish for it yourself then?" He wouldn't sacrifice Yan Liuyuan's health in exchange for food for himself. This pine root tasted just like celery anyway and was not too difficult to swallow either. Right now, Ren Xiaosu was paying great attention to what he said since he was afraid of causing harm to Yan Liuyuan at home. After getting rebuked by Ren Xiaosu, Lu Buletin felt a little embarrassed. "Come on, it was just a joke. I would have wished for it a long time ago if it were effective. If I wished for a wild animal to get presented to us, do you really think that a wild animal would really get presented to us?" But at this moment, they heard a strange sound coming from the forest outside the cave. It sounded like there was a lot of movement. Ren Xiaosu, Yang Xiaojun, and Su Xianchu instinctively picked up their guns upon hearing the sounds. The next second, 3 boars, 2 wild cats, 2 snakes, and 7 monkeys scattered out of the forest. The wild cats already looked the size of the leopards found in the schoolbooks, not to mention the size of the boars. The monkeys were nearly as tall as humans, and if they stood upright, they would probably be 1.6 meters tall. Ren Xiaosu was quite sure this was not caused by Yan Liuyuan's luck from making a wish. With all of these animals put together, they would probably be more than enough to kill the 6 of them. This should not fucking be considered good luck. Ren Xiaosu stared blankly at the wild animals and said, "Lu Buletin, is your mouth fucking jinxed?" Lu Buletin was nearly in tears. "I was just saying, the wild animals and humans were caught in a deadlock. It seemed that the wild animals had not expected anyone to be in here either. Ren Xiaosu lowered his voice and whispered, "Lu Buletin, go tell them that we're vegetarians today so they can leave." Lu Buletin burst into tears. He looked at the pack of wild animals outside the cave and said, "Would my words be effective? Hey, you all there, please leave." Ren Xiaosu was just kidding. But after Lu Buletin said please leave, those wild animals actually turned around and ran in another direction. In reality, Ren Xiaosu felt that he could defeat them. Although pistols would barely cause any substantial harm to these animals, he still had a shadow clone as his greatest trump card. But Ren Xiaosu did not want to get exposed. As soon as his shadow clone appeared, Su Xianchu and the others would know that he could copy other people's powers. It would be difficult to say what kind of consequences there would be. Moreover, the shadow clone he copied turned out to be even stronger than Su Xianchu's, so that wouldn't make him look good either. Ren Xiaosu looked back at Lu Buletin in surprise. Did this guy awaken his skill of luck just like Yan Liuyuan had? That's not it. Ren Xiaosu looked back to the forest and said, "What drove those wild animals out here to where we are? Wild animals shouldn't get along this well. They neither attacked each other nor attacked us. That means something even more terrifying is oppressing them inside the forest. They intended to take refuge in this cave. It seems like that's really it." Su Xianchu nodded and said, "But because we've already occupied the cave, they have no choice but to go elsewhere. Do y'all remember? Some strange commotions came from the forest yesterday evening as well, but whatever made that noise went away before it showed itself. I assumed that whatever made that sound was the source of the danger. But now that I think about it, it might have been animals searching for a cave to seek refuge in," Ren Xiaosu recalled. "Just what's in this forest that made these natives stay away from their own territory and cause the different species to get along with each other?"